Chapter 1. I pumped my arms by my sides, clinging to the gun in my hand. I increased my speed by pushing my legs to run faster. Damn, this guy is quick. Stop. ICPD. I yelled into the wind, and the fleeing man looked over his shoulder and saw me. He faced forward again and kept on running. I grinned in self-mockery at my faint hope he'd stop. They never listened. Even when I caught them, and they professed innocence. Didn't make any difference. They always ran. Part of me didn't mind. It made the arrest so much more satisfying. And quite honestly, the chase was more exhilarating than a gym membership. I jumped over a sidewalk bench and dodged a mother with a stroller. She screamed as the accused, closely followed by me, zoomed by. I heard words on the wind. He was yelling something at me, but he wasn't stopping to make sure I could hear. And I wasn't planning to stop until I caught him. The accused always pled innocence once I had them in my grasp. They tried to convince me they'd done nothing wrong. Which they hadn't. Not yet. That's why I was chasing this man today. To make sure his crime could never happen. Stop! I yelled out again. My heart was racing in time with the pounding of my feet against the pavement, my footfalls echoing in my ears. I glanced around. There were too many people who could bear witness. Time hopping here would not be possible. It was against the rules to hop within a hop. But I'd do it as soon as I could. Nothing was more important than preventing this man's future crime. We dodged more people walking their dogs or heading out for breakfast on this sunny Saturday morning. 2 weeks in the future. The weather was getting nice. Warm sunshine was always something to look forward to. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus on the job in front of me. I dashed forward as a break in the crowd allowed me more room to sprint. The future perp I was chasing looked back again, obviously hoping he'd lost me in the crowd. No luck there. I always got my man. Or woman. I met his gaze and his eyes widened before he bolted across the street. When I followed, the loud blare of a taxi horn screamed in my ears. Arg! I slid across the hood of the car that had honked at me, and couldn't help the chuckle escaping my throat as the man I was chasing made the wrong decision. As soon as he reached the other side of the street, he veered into a park, instead of continuing on the street where all these people were gathered. Open plan in the park. Less people. Less eyes to witness anything. Perfect. I could easily catch him now if I bent the rules a little. No one would see me here. Excitement zinged through me like a bolt of lightning. I clapped my hands once and focused on where I needed to go. I shot straight through a time tunnel and popped out the other side, right in front of my target. Up close, he was bigger than I'd anticipated, a good 50 pounds heavier than me. He cried out in shock at my appearance and tried to make a sharp turn to avoid me. Then a strange snap sounded as his legs gave out from beneath him, and he tumbled sideways onto the grass. I stuck my gun into its holster and swooped down on him, knocking him further to his belly with my knees in his back, pulling his arms behind him. Arnold Finch. You're under arrest. A thrill shot up my spine as I said those words. I love this part. I pulled standard police-issue metal cuffs from my belt and wrapped them around his wrists, clicking them shut with a heavy snap. One of my favorite sounds in this world. Well, other than the sound the air makes as I jump through time. It's like a whirly click, with a hint of jasmine floating on the breeze. There was little else that gave me such pleasure. I didn't do anything. The man beneath me predictably began to protest, and I pulled at his shirt until he was on his knees, and then hefted him to his feet. I grunted with the effort, my fingers digging into his shirt. Not yet, you haven't. This was the part where they begged. He groaned and rolled his eyes as though he knew exactly what I meant. I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't. Just because I thought some bad things about my wife doesn't mean I'd ever actually hurt her. I'd heard that excuse too many times to count. The perpetrators always denied guilt, never being accountable for the actions they would most certainly have committed if I'd given them the time to do it. Well, you'll have all the time in the world now to explain how you never intended to kill your wife. He groaned again as I pushed him forward toward the street. But he was so big and lumbering, I stopped him and considered my options again. I wasn't supposed to time hop across town when I arrested someone. The rules said that the only hops to be used were to move forward in time, then back to your own time. Nothing more. But this guy was at least 50 pounds heavier than me, 6 inches taller, and someone who was destined to become a murderer. Not a man I wanted to drag 20 blocks through the city. I was partly thinking about my safety, but mostly I considered what may happen out there in the community. How could I safeguard public safety? How would I explain it if he tried to get away again and knocked a woman into the path of a car, or something equally as horrific? Nope. The rules were meant to be bent a little, surely, when it came to public safety. I thought about where I wanted to be, released the hold I had on his shirt and clapped my hands once. The zing of energy and magic in my palms lifted my lips into a smile. A hole appeared before us and the man yelped. "Let's go, Mr. Finch." "I'm not going through there." As if he had a choice. I put a hand in the middle of his back and pushed. Hard. "Oh yes you are." Arnold Finch stumbled forward, his hands still handcuffed behind his back. I followed behind him, slipping through the time hop. 1 minute forward in time. That familiar sizzle swept over my skin, making me shiver with delight. We landed exactly where I had planned. In an alley beside the police station, out of view of all the uniformed officers who didn't like my special gifts any more than they wanted me using them in front of the normals. Speaking of normals, the time hop didn't suit everyone. Arnold Finch lurched forward, bending in half. "Oh God, I'm going to be sick." My suspect staggered sideways toward the concrete wall. I gripped his arm tightly and stayed close. They'd attempted to run off on me before, these criminals. After all, they had nothing to lose once they'd been identified as a definite threat, and I'd found them. They knew that our justice system had been honed to a fine art. There'd be no way of getting out of this charge now. I threw him a bone, though I didn't care if he vomited or not. "It'll pass in 30 seconds. Take a deep breath and let's go." He shivered a little but straightened once again, for which I was grateful. If he decided to turn into a dead weight, a sack of potatoes I couldn't move, then I'd have to call in reinforcements. And I really didn't want to do that. "Let's go, Mr. Finch." I heaved him around the corner of the building to the entrance of the police station. The uniformed officers gave me sidelong looks as I pulled the perp into the building. I let go of Finch and tugged on my leather jacket to straighten it, staring straight ahead. Ignoring their condemning stares was difficult. The attitude of law enforcement toward me still rankled. Made me feel about 3 inches tall, though I was determined to hide that from everyone. 5 years into this job and many on the force still thought I was some sort of freak. It wasn't fair or just. They should be grateful for my talents and those like me. Crime in the city was down by 90%. Luckily, the officers in my own station knew and liked me. Although they did jump a little when I turned up in the future and then hopped back again. But at least they didn't make me feel bad about my unusual abilities. Speaking of which, maybe hopping to my own police station would have been a better decision. Not too late to rectify that. Never too late for a time hopper. Into the conference room, Mr. Finch. I turned right, opened the door and shoved my prisoner in, then shut the door again. I clapped once and the air around us whirled. Oh no. Not again. Yep. Let's go. I pushed him gently, and this time he managed to walk through on his own. There was a certain buzz of adrenaline from time hopping, and despite the nausea, Mr. Finch would have already felt that buzz too. We time hopped forward 1 single minute again, this time landing just outside my local police station, the 4th precinct. Arnold staggered but didn't fall over this time. This way, Mr. Finch. I held tight to his shirt and weaved through the bevy of detectives standing on the steps and inside the precinct building. I presented him to the officer manning the arrest desk and shot a smile her way. I saw this woman almost every day. She was someone I liked and trusted, and I couldn't say that about many people. Officer Sarah Polax, I said, to satisfy the official requirement. Checking in, Mr. Arnold Finch. On future arrest warrant 21031. I pulled the crumpled paperwork from my back pocket and slid it across the desk. Hello, Officer Polax. You've been busy already today. I smiled, relaxing into the comfort of my workplace. Yep, I'd made the right decision to bring him here, rather than go somewhere closer to the arrest point. I needed to remember to do that from now on. It meant more paperwork for me, but an overall better experience for the whole day. You know me, Susie. The early bird catches the worm. Arnold began to beg. He was a little later with that than my usual perps. You need to listen to me. I didn't do anything, and I wasn't about to. I swear it. Please. You gotta believe me. I swear it. I ignored his pleas. My desk is this way, Mr. Finch. I walked behind him, directing him with a prod to one shoulder or the other as we trudged through the police station. Finally, we reached my little piece of the station. Stop. He stopped, obviously trying to be as obedient as possible to avoid antagonizing me. Let's get these off you. I unlocked the metal cuffs from his wrists and directed him to sit in the visitor chair at my desk. He was already logged into the system now, so I could relax. Because no matter which direction he ran, if decided to be that stupid, there was an officer ready to take him down. I sat at my chair and logged onto my computer. All right, Mr. Finch. Let me pull up your file and I'll let you know the details of your crime. He groaned and gripped the desk in front of him as I flipped through the files on my computer. Damn slow machine. It needed an upgrade. The perp banged his fist on the desk, obviously frustrated with the lag time. I felt that way about our technology sometimes too. I didn't do anything. How many times do I need to tell you this? Look, what's your name? I'd said my name more than once in the last little while, but he obviously hadn't been listening. I glanced at the man opposite me, noting his intense brown eyes and shaggy hair that had passed the days of needing a good haircut a month ago. Officer Sarah Polax. I spoke clearly, not wanting to have to keep repeating myself in that regard. I repressed the need to explain what and who I was. I didn't look like a police officer, I knew. With my purple hair, leather jacket and blue leggings, I probably looked more like an aspiring musician or barista at a local coffee shop. But my appearance gave me access to practically every place on Earth, and my skin-tight clothing kept me warm in the drafts of time hopping. Something a normal would never understand. His clenched fists uncurled and his hand slid into his lap, cupped and relaxed. Sarah, you need to listen to me. I know this isn't your fault, but your superiors. They've made a major mistake. I am not who you think I am. I glanced at the screen. Name Arnold Finch. Occupation, computer programmer. Date of birth, 22nd of April, 1984. Date of crime, 31st of November, 2020, 3 weeks from now. His eyebrows shot up and he swallowed awkwardly. Look, that's me on your computer. But I wasn't going to murder my wife, I wasn't. I swear. No one can guarantee the future. I could have changed my mind at any time. There's something wrong with this system, Sarah. I just know it. I looked at him, bored now. I heard the same thing all the time. That's Officer Polax to you. And how do you figure that, Mr. Finch? He pinned me with a glare that struck right at the depths of my chest. The anger and betrayal were ugly. I could see the murderer behind the shaggy haircut now. Because they've got this wrong. I swear on my own life. I would never have done it. Despite what I could sense, something inside me shook at the strength of his conviction. Was that anger from a murderer? Or a man who believed the system had failed him? I shook my head. I couldn't even let myself think that way. The system worked, it had to. Otherwise, what were we doing this for? I smiled grimly at the man who, back in the day, would have murdered his wife in a few weeks. I was sure of it. And he may have even gotten away with it. With a good lawyer, bad police work, and a lot of luck. A lethal combination. But not anymore. The early criminal detection system was foolproof. Or so they said. Sit tight, Mr. Finch. I'm going to find my associate and get your paperwork processed. Don't go anywhere. I made my way over to Terry Thomas, my direct superior. Hey, Terry. I picked up Arnold Finch just now. He's at my desk. Would you like me to process him? Terry shook his head and said what he always said to me. Great job, Sarah. But I think Max or Sam can take it from here. Disappointing, but he seemed to think that I was only useful on one front. I nodded at him and did what he said. I let one of the real cops sort him out. Sometimes I felt like a bounty hunter instead of a police officer. I walked past Sam, who nodded at me, and headed to my desk to collect my perp. Sam was dressed in the ugly navy uniform they all wore. Me, on the other hand, was comfortable, relaxed, colorful, and still got to carry a gun. I really shouldn't complain. I rubbed my temples and took a detour, walking toward the break room to pour myself a coffee. The caffeine withdrawal headache was eating at the back of my skull, and some hot java was just what I needed to beat it away. Or were the headaches caused by jumping through the timeline continuum? Caffeine addiction was a common side effect of time hopping. The classic chicken and the egg problem, but either way, I needed the black stuff as much as I needed air or food. And food for me was optional some days. Coffee was not. I clicked on the espresso machine and grabbed my huge purple mug from the top shelf. Something the perp had said to me just now was niggling at my gut, like an unknown secret long forgotten. He said the system was broken. He said they'd gotten it wrong. And although I'd heard it all before, and at the time of arrest had been convinced he was just like all the others, the conviction I'd heard in his voice was hard to shake. I checked my watch. Damn, it was later than I'd thought. Must have lost some hours through the jumps that I hadn't accounted for. Time to clock out. I spoke the words aloud, trying to convince myself. I chugged the rest of my coffee down. It wasn't as sweet as I'd normally like, but the headache was beginning to split across my line of sight, and there was no time to do anything but gulp it down. Max was grilling my perp as I left. I waved at him to signal I was headed out. He nodded once, and I was dismissed. Not needed anymore. I'd done my job for the day, and tomorrow I'd do the same thing. Hop through time to catch a perp before he was a perp, then book him for a crime that would never happen. Like a weird fairy godmother. I chuckled to myself as I waved at the rest of the uniformed cops on my way out. Terry, the supervisor who actually saw how much work I put in, waved goodbye as I left the station. So did the desk officer. Bye, Sarah. See you tomorrow, Susie said. See ya. The rest of the team thought I was an asset and a bragging point to a lot of other precincts, but they hadn't tried to offer any kind of friendship up to this point. It was kind of cool to know I was respected, though it would be nice to have some real friends for once. Not just colleagues. I got on my street bike, put on my helmet, and cruised home to my small apartment the old-fashioned way. On my motorbike. No time hopping out of hours. And never unless I was pursuing a criminal. I staggered inside and fell onto the couch, my headache eating at my energy. I really needed to learn to pick up a coffee earlier in my shift. Especially on a hopping day. The high-pitched meow of my exotic cat sounded only moments before her clawed feet landed on my belly. Ow. Sandy. You know you're not supposed to do that. My feline friend, who was as purple as the hair on my head, appeared to raise one eyebrow, circled around my soft leggings, and plopped down in a hairy lump at my feet. Well, I ran out of steam before I'd even gotten into telling her off. Silly little thing that she was. Whoever said dogs had owners and cats had servants knew the truth about animals. And I was a willing slave. Her presence calmed me when little else did. I relaxed back onto the couch as my hand caressed her silky, soft fur. I exhaled a long breath. What a strange day. Not unusual in any way other than that single moment when I doubted I'd nabbed the right guy. I couldn't shake what that perp had said. My gut, which I generally trusted, was telling me there was truth in Arnold's statements. But I couldn't simply just believe him. My whole world, hell, the current free world, our whole justice system, was based on the ability to accurately know, perfectly assess future crimes. I closed my eyes and wished my dinner could fly up into my apartment, but that was not one of my gifts. I chuckled at my own joke and reached for my phone. Thank goodness for food delivery services. Chapter 2. Sarah, come into my office for a minute, please, my chief Alex Dixon called out to me. I jumped at the unexpected summons. I'd been deep in thought, looking into Arnold Finch's case from yesterday. It had been an unusual case for a specific reason. According to our detection system, his wife's murder had been planned for more than 3 weeks in the future. Not many people premeditated a crime that far in advance. Especially since we now had officers who hopped into the future and looked at crime reports from the days preceding. They came back with as much information as possible to capture the criminals. Times, dates, locations. And when they had the proof that we needed to convict them, my job came in. I time-hopped hours or even days into the future to capture them. The detectives that sought out the information in the future found out the whereabouts of these criminals too. So I always knew where to go and when they'd be in a certain place. Even so, in a city of 10 million people, it was more complicated than people thought. But because of this system, of hopping into the future and seeing how everything would pan out, people weren't stupid enough to plan a murder a month out. But Arnold Finch had. Why? That was a puzzle for another day, it seemed, as it was time now to follow my boss into one of the only offices in the precinct. The rest of us were situated at a sea of desks squashed together and divided only by thin 4-foot-high walls. He flicked his wrist as he sat in his leather chair behind his desk. Shut the door behind you and have a seat, Sarah. My heart leapt as I moved into his office, shutting the door as he'd requested, and sitting down in the creaky chair opposite him. What was this about? Is there something wrong, sir? My guilty conscience haunted me, my brain running through the few rules I broke on a daily basis, and I began to categorize them into importance. Surely there wasn't anything on that list that was worth being called into the chief's office. He leaned back in his chair. Oh no, not at all. I wanted to congratulate you on your work yesterday. Surprise rippled through me. Oh well, thank you. I rested back in the chair and crossed my hands in my lap. Of all the things I'd expected to hear from my superior today, that wasn't it. I'd had the strangest feeling I'd done something wrong. He continued. And I wanted you to know that you're in line for a promotion. Yes. I'd been hoping all my hard work would pay off. You do have some competition, of course. Phoebe Flicker. I forced a smile to my lips. Phoebe Flicker? Of course, she was my rival. I only just managed to contain my grimace. That nasty bitch didn't deserve a promotion. She was lazy, power-hungry, and a terrible teammate. But she was pretty in a conventional sort of way, and more importantly for her climb up the career ladder, sucked more cocks than I had cups of coffee. Yes. Of course, sir. All you have to do is pass the written exam and impress the panel in the interview. Everything else is pretty much in the bag. You've got tons of arrests, you're skilled with time hopping, and you've shown your dedication to justice with the endless hours you put in. I sat up straighter in my chair, dropping my gaze as pleasure ricocheted through me at his compliments. I worked hard, having little else in my life. Except my sister, of course, but she was more of a part-time job. Thank you, sir. I didn't know what else to say to such praise. It was hard enough keeping my cheeks from burning with heat. "You're welcome, Sarah. You're a good team player, and everyone in the precinct admires you." His words soothed me. I often worried that the people in my office didn't truly like me, but instead were in awe or fear of what I could do. It was nice of the boss to say such a thing. "Thank you, sir." I headed out of the office with my head still spinning from all the new information. I was in line for a promotion. What would that mean for my life? More money? More status? Better hours? Hopefully. The chance to get a life, as my sister so indelicately put it. I finished my shift with the paperwork for the last perp I'd arrested. The most boring aspect of all my jobs, but one that I spent more than half my time doing. Maybe I should have gone into the detection business. Jumping forward, finding out what crimes were being committed, and coming back with the intel? In theory, it sounded like more fun and would be very satisfying, but only senior time hoppers had those jobs, and I'd heard the headaches that came with such frequent long time jumps were horrendously bad. Most people were pensioned off or retired quickly. 12 months was the longest anyone lasted in that job, and I had many more years ahead of me to pay off my mortgage than that. On my way home, I grabbed some takeout and sat on my couch beside my beautiful cat and enjoying the condo I owned. I would be paying this apartment off for many more years to come, but it was worth it. One day it would be mine, and I loved this place. Beside me on the old couch, my cell phone rang its high-pitched tune, and I picked it up with a smile lifting my lips. "Hey sis, what's up?" I hadn't heard from her in a week, which was too long generally. "Sarah. Long time no see. Where you been?" Amanda's slurred voice came through the phone loud and clear. I rolled my eyes and put my food down so that I could concentrate on my baby sister's words. "Amanda, what are you doing? And yes, it has been far too long. I'm home if you want to come over now." I could hear the hope in my tone and swallowed, trying to calm down. My younger sister was far too party-hungry and carefree for my liking. Which was a nice way of saying she had no sense of responsibility, nor a job that she could keep for more than a month. No. I can't. I'm on my way to Stacy's bachelorette party, but I want to see you. Soon. A groan rolled from my lips. Bachelor parties and their female counterparts were the best places for debauchery, and I knew my sister would be at the head of the conga line. "Oh, please be careful, Amanda. The last thing I need is to be bailing you out of a jail cell in the morning." "That happened once, Sarah." "Once?" A giggle rose to my lips as I remembered that fateful night. It had been the devil's own job getting her out of jail without people finding out she was my sister. "True. But I don't want you getting into any more trouble, Amanda. I love you, you know that. And I miss hanging out with you." I swallowed hard, practically choking on my emotions. I did miss her, too much if I was being honest. Like a missing limb sometimes. I sighed. Other days I missed her as much as a mole that had been burned off. "Oh, me too, Sarah." "Okay, Tom, tomorrow night, dinner? Drinks?" I had to work during the day, but I could make that work. "Yeah, sure, I get off at 6, so I'll meet you at your place. Or do you want to go out?" I knew the answer before I'd even asked the question. Amanda's apartment was a cesspool of dirty clothes tainted with the scent of sex. And she shared the space with 3 other party girls, which wasn't a good thing either. "Oh, screw it, let's go out. I'll text you with the address later." Okay. There's this cute little restaurant that just opened up around the corner from my place." "Perfect," I said. Amanda was adorable, even if she was a bit of a party girl. "You take care tonight. Don't go home with any randoms. You don't know who you can and can't trust nowadays, Amanda." She giggled. "Thanks to you, I feel safer already. Love you." Amanda hung up, and I shook my head as I put the cell down next to me and smiled at my cat. "That one is crazier than you." I worried too much about her, or more than most sisters did. But since our parents had died in a car accident a few years back, the role of protector had fallen to me. Unfortunately for me, though, Amanda didn't use the good sense she'd been born with. But at 21, I could hardly blame her for wanting to party while she could. Hopefully, she'd grow up soon. I finished my dinner of Thai noodles and beef and headed off for a warm shower, the day's events playing on repeat inside my head. A promotion. I couldn't believe I was up for a promotion. It took so long to move up in the force, especially for a woman. Everyone said so. And there was something still niggling me about that arrest yesterday. I stuck my head into his cell today, just to see what was happening with his case. Or that's what I told myself. In truth, I couldn't keep away. And they'd be moving him into a proper jail soon to await his speedy trial. Gone were the days of county jail, a lengthy trial and prison only when convicted. With the in-depth reports of their future transgressions, their guilt was assumed and punished accordingly. But surprise upon surprise, he still protested his innocence. They all did, though. That was the hardest part of my job. A catch-22, if you will. It was incredibly satisfying to catch a killer before he committed a crime. Not only was justice served, but lives were saved. Real lives. But there was that moment when I caught them. When they were so sure they weren't in the wrong, that they'd never do the crime I was accusing them of. They were so passionate, so seemingly shocked at what I was saying. And I wanted to believe them. That was the hardest feeling to fight against for me. Empathy. As one human being to another. To watch them be accused of a crime they hadn't committed yet, but knowing they would be tried as though they had done the deed. And that man yesterday, Arnold Finch, had looked so honest. I got out of the shower, dried myself, and went to bed with my Kindle in my hand. A paranormal romance for tonight. Something totally surreal and a world where there were only happily ever afters. That was true fantasy. The metallic sound of my phone alarm going off was out of place. Why was it here? There was a pool, and someone was having a party. No one I knew, though. So why was I here? Awareness dawned as my eyelids fluttered open. Sunshine streamed into my bedroom beneath my curtains, lighting up the old carpet and highlighting the shoes I'd forgotten to put away last night. I groaned as I twisted around to check the clock. It was too early to get up. Gah. I didn't want to. I reached over to turn off the horrible alarm noise and lay on my back in bed, enjoying the warmth beneath the covers. I glanced at the time again. If I didn't get my workout in first thing, I struggled with energy during the day, and then didn't have the discipline to exercise after my shift. So I had no choice. It was now or never. I rolled out of bed and, despite the cold in the room, dragged on my running gear. I tied up my long purple hair, noting that I needed to make an appointment with my hairdresser to get it touched up soon, and grabbed an energy bar. My powerful motorcycle sat waiting in the garage for the ride to the station. My reward for a good workout. My house key jingled in my palm as I jogged down the stairs, and I slid it into a concealed pocket in my sneakers. Time to run. There was a 10-mile circuit I did almost every day, and the moment my feet hit the path, the music inside my head began to play. The pounding of my heart in my chest, the beat of my feet against the pavement, my arms pumping, my breath quickening all sharpened my awareness and made me feel joyfully replete. Blessed to be alive, young and healthy. Running gave me a physical ecstasy that a person who didn't get this high could never understand. I ran until my heart pounded too hard to count its beats. I ran until my legs ached and sweat poured down my skin. Then I stopped outside my condo, my head screaming for caffeine, but my body energized and shivering with adrenaline. I jogged up the stairs to my home once again. Time for a coffee. Then shower. Then work. My daily routine. The ride to the precinct was uncharacteristically slow. As I sat in the unmoving traffic on my street bike behind a huge truck, I began to regret the longer than normal shower I'd had. By the time I parked and ran into the precinct, I'd looked at my wristwatch 100 times and hated every minute that ticked past the start of my shift. I rushed through the door, waving to Susie as I whizzed by. "Morning." Susie didn't wave back. She actually turned away and attended the computer to the side of the desk as though she hadn't seen me. But I knew she had. That was strange. Very strange. Had I done something to upset her? I didn't have time to ask what was wrong. I tried not to take it personally and shrugged the perceived rejection off. "Put your pole vault down," my father would say, "and stop jumping to conclusions." I walked through the office carrying my helmet, smiling at people as they sat at their workstations, drinking their coffee. God, I wanted my second cup. But everyone was acting like Susie. No one would meet my gaze, not even Harry, the resident lech, who would give you as much unwanted attention as you could handle. My heart began to pound, and anger stirred in my gut. What had happened? Sure. I was like 20 minutes late, but I'd make it up on the other end of my shift. I always did. Two men who usually teased me or gave me crap about one thing or another saw me and literally ran in the opposite direction. What the fuck? Seriously, what was going on? I stopped at my desk, set my bag and helmet down, and looked around. No one was speaking. The tone of the usually busy room was somber and suspicious. What on earth was going on here? The chief, Alex, walked up to my desk, his mouth twisted and turned down. My heart sank and panic gripped my heart. "Sarah, could I see you in my office?" I swallowed hard and stood up straight. "Of course, sir. Now?" "Yes, thank you." He turned and headed back to his office, and I followed, my mind racing with every little thing I could be reprimanded for. The way everyone in the office was acting, they definitely knew something I didn't. Was I about to get fired? What could possibly account for this behavior? Surely nothing I'd done in my whole career, let alone lately, could have me terminated. Maybe they'd finally found out about me getting my sister out of jail, that one time. My stomach tightened and I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. Hopefully not. Maybe they wanted to punish me for the little extra time hopping I did on occasion. I knew I wasn't supposed to use it at will, but I was a small female often chasing large male criminals. I used what I had to stay safe. Could that be it? I had time hopped to get ahead of the last arrest I made. But surely that wasn't enough to warrant this treatment? Maybe it was something to do with the promotion? Had they given it to Phoebe? I followed the chief into his office and closed the door without being told this time. The atmosphere surrounding us was intense enough to be clear that he wanted privacy. "Sarah, have a seat." I sat down in one of the chairs opposite his desk, my tight chest. Maybe someone complained about me. I wasn't the friendliest person. I didn't even have a partner because no one else in the precinct could time hop. Were they jealous? Did they hate me for what I could do? Or maybe it was something totally different. I waited as patiently as possible, the questions whirling in my head. "Sarah, I am very sorry to be the one to tell you this, but I have terrible news." A cold chill passed down my spine, like the hand of death himself. This was a death notification speech. I knew the tone too well. I'd had to do it myself before, not too many times luckily. But the chief had done this before, and I'd heard him do it myself. Which meant it had to be an immediate family member. And I only had one of those left. My heart squeezed so tightly I gasped for air and blinked rapidly as my eyes filled with hot tears. No, it couldn't be. There was only one person in the world who I called family. And she was safe. Surely. Curled up somewhere sleeping off a hangover. Please God. Your sister Amanda has been found dead. Chapter 3. Shock raced through me like a wall of ice hitting me with full impact. Freezing my face, my heart, my very veins. How? How had it happened? I coughed to clear my throat, forcing my heart to beat again. My blood to run with warmth. Where was adrenaline when you needed it? How did it happen? We have systems, strategies in place to prevent this. This is what we do, Chief. Yes. I know. But accidents happen. People act out in crimes of passion, spur-of-the-moment things. You know our system is not perfect, Sarah. It never will be, as long as humans are spontaneous by nature. I'm so very sorry. I shuddered at his tone. He wasn't nearly angry enough on my behalf. He sounded forlorn, sad. And I didn't like it. Not at all. What happened to her? We don't know yet. The investigation team is on the case, and you'll be updated as soon as we know anything. My head was beginning to clear, and in place of the sheer shock and grief, anger bubbled and brewed. Someone had to pay. Which investigation team? The chief inhaled deeply, the pause before he answered too long. He didn't want to tell me. The homicide investigation team? I prompted, knowing there had to be evidence of foul play in Amanda's death. There was no way she was accidentally hit by a car. It wasn't her style. Our mom used to say that Amanda came into the world during a thunderstorm, screaming her head off, wanting all the attention on her. And she'd go out in a spectacular fashion too. But this ridiculous waste of a life. It was not to be endured. And I didn't need to suffer it. I was a time hopper, after all. I'd been too young to help my parents, but I could do something to save my sister. Right. I pushed myself to my feet. I'll jump into the loop now and stop her murder before it's begun. Then we can catch the would-be assassin and arrest him, or her. This was my job, and in this moment, I was intensely grateful for it. I wouldn't sit at home grieving my sister today. I'd be out catching her killer, and when I came back into the future, Amanda would still be alive. I'm sorry, but you can't do that, Sarah, the chief said as he stood up and faced me, his voice hard. Decided. Implacable. I knew that tone and that look. And yet it didn't affect me the way it normally would. I blinked a few times as I stared at him. Had he just denied my request? Why not? Surely he saw how insane it was to deny me this. We can't allow you to do that. You know that. The laws relating to time hopping are finite. I wanted to laugh at him. Didn't he realize how insane he sounded? I knew the rules. I'd studied them for years, and worked them for even longer. But this was my sister. What are you talking about? I do this every single day. Stop a murder before it happens. It's my job. It's what I'm good at. It's what you pay me to do. Surely he saw the lunacy in what he was saying? The rules were there, of course, but they could be broken. I'm sure they could be. I'd just never tried it myself. The chief shook his head. That isn't true, Sarah. We don't wait for the murder to happen, and then jump back to change the sequence of events. That would violate our time-hopping treaties. The laws are very specific. We can only stop a future crime from happening, prevention. Not choosing who lives and dies. We aren't God. Anger slid through my gut and coiled like a snake deep in my body. I wanted to slap him in the face, but instead balled my fingers into tight fists. What he was saying was simply ludicrous. We played God every single day in this office. Chief. He cut me off. I'm sorry, Sarah, but we can't allow it. I leaned forward, meeting the chief's gaze as the anger boiled up inside my belly. This is bullshit. He gave me a soft smile, which didn't help the swirling red haze in my vision. Was he mocking me? Because that's how it felt. Take a few days, Sarah. You're entitled to bereavement pay for the next week. It will give you time to organize the funeral and grieve. You'll need to be available for questioning, as well. Words that would probably get me fired sat on my tongue. Heavy and hot, like bullets in a loaded gun. But I held my temper by the thinnest of margins. Instead, I turned and stomped out of his office, making loud, angry noises with my riding boots. Sarah. Marty walked toward me at my desk as I grabbed my bag. I shook my head, not wanting to hear him. I threw my bag over my shoulder and ran to the front door. I had to get out of there. I had to go home. This time Susie stepped out from behind her desk. Sarah. I'm so sorry. Angry tears blurred my vision as I put my head down and charged for the door without answering her. What the hell was this shit? Why was the chief stopping me from saving my sister? Why? It would be so easy. I could just go back to last night and make sure she never went to that stupid bachelorette party. I'd bring her home with me. Feed her whatever food and alcohol she wanted. I'd massage her polished feet. I'd tell her jokes and hold her tight. Anything to keep her alive. Angry, hot tears slipped down my cheeks as I walked faster. Going nowhere. Just needing to clear my head. I walked around the city, up and down streets I knew too well. I'd worked at the same police precinct since I graduated 5 years ago, and I patrolled these areas. I'd run these streets during my lunch break. I could do laps in my sleep, which was what I needed. Familiarity. A way to calm the raging beast inside me. I pushed my grief down as far as I could. I refused to grieve for a sister who could be brought back from the dead with a simple time hop. Well, whether a backwards hop was easy or simple, I wasn't sure, but it couldn't be that much different to going forward, surely? I just needed more details of her death to truly prevent it from happening. Knowing my sister, if I jumped back in time and made her stay at my place all night, she'd sneak out sometime during the night, and eventually what had happened would still become reality. And I couldn't have that. So to prevent it ever happening, I needed to know the how, the where, and most definitely the why. I turned a corner, crossed a main road, and made my way through Central Park. There was a chill in the air, and I shivered. I should have grabbed my bike. Ah well. I took out my cell phone from my bag. I needed more information about what happened last night, and the police, my coworkers, weren't going to help me. So, there was only one way of getting it. I had to speak to someone who was there last night. I hit the speed dial button to Nicole, my sister's best friend. A chick who was as crazy as Amanda. Hello? Nicole's groggy voice came through the phone, and I suddenly remembered it was barely 10 in the morning on a Saturday. The middle of the night, as far as these party-goers were concerned. Ah well, too bad. I had more pressing concerns. Nick. It's Sarah. I just got the news about Amanda. What happened last night? There was a gasp of silence, then a sob. Oh. Sarah. I am so sorry. She sounded it. But that wasn't what I needed. Yeah. I need to know what happened, Nick. Where did you guys go last night? What time did Amanda go missing? If I had a timeline, I could work out when to time hop to, and where. The longer I stayed in an alternate timeline, the worse the side effects, thus the short lifespan of the investigators that hopped forward to bring us home intel. I don't really know anything, Sarah. I wish I did. I miss her already, so much. Nicole began to cry and frustration clawed at me. That was not helping anyone. Nicole, stop. Please. I'm trying to find out what happened so I can hop back in time to save her. But you need to give me details. Specifics. Nick's sobbing stopped immediately. Oh, Sarah. Do you really think you could? There was so much hope in her voice it brought tears to my own eyes, but I ruthlessly pushed them away. I don't know. Of course I can. But if I have any chance of saving her, then you need to help me, Nick. I wish I could. She sobbed again. But I drank too much before we went out. Stacy put me in a taxi around midnight, and Amanda was still dancing. I saw her just before I left. Well, you're no help. Thanks, Nick. I'll call Stacy. I hung up before Nicole could tell me not to. Stacy was the bride-to-be and would probably have a massive hangover this morning. But there were more important things to worry about than Stacy's feelings. The phone rang out and finally went to voicemail. But instead of leaving a message, I hung up and tried again. They all had my number. Amanda's friends always needed someone to contact when she needed to be saved, or picked up or bailed out. And here I was. At it again. Lou, the groggy voice answered the phone and I jumped at the chance to get her. Stacy. It's Sarah. There was a long pause. And I waited. Oh, hey. Have you heard about Amanda? I asked, the apparent lack of understanding of why I was calling concerning me. There was another pause, then a sigh. Yeah. She sounded sad. And drunk. Probably drowning her sorrows. All right, then you need to help me. I'm trying to piece together what happened last night so that I can time hop back to save her. I was expecting the same reaction that I'd gotten from Nicole. Instead, she said, I don't know anything, Sarah. I don't. I gaped for a moment. How did she not know anything? She was there. She could give me time and location at the very least. I stifled the growl of frustration that rose. Why wasn't anyone wanting to help me? First my chief, now this? Her own friends? I would have thought they'd be jumping on this white horse with me, wanting to save Amanda. What do you mean, you don't know anything, Stacy? It was your party. She was your friend. How can you say that? And why the hell didn't any of you call me? They'd always called me. Always. Even if they could help Amanda themselves, I'd always been the easy option. Cleaning up their mess. Sarah, I don't know what to tell you. I tore at the air with angry fingers, forcing my voice to stay calm. Give me something, Stacy. Tell me what you know. Give me a place, a time. Anything. I need to find her killer so that I can stop him. There was a long pause, then Stacy said, You need to talk to Geoff Wolf, Sarah. I can't help you. I stopped. What was she talking about? Geoff Wolf? Yeah. The phone clicked into silence. What the? Stacy had hung up on me. She hung up. And I was left gaping at the phone. Some friend you are. For fuck's sake. Though, she had given me a lead. Geoff Wolf. Geoff Wolf. I'd heard that name before. Somewhere. It tickled in the back of my memory. From a case a long time ago. But which one? My brain wouldn't work with its usual calm, so I turned around and made my way back to the precinct. I had a lead. And I was going to make sure I followed it up. I walked into the station with my head held high. I was the grieving family member, the victim. I would not hide. Susie ran forward once again. And this time, I didn't avoid her. Sarah, I'm so sorry for your loss. She hugged me tightly and I held firm against the need to give in to my sadness. Now was not the time. Thanks, Suze. The chief told me to take a week or so on bereavement leave. Can you arrange that for me? Paid days off while I sorted all this out. Yes, please. Oh, of course. She ran back around the desk and started tapping on her desktop computer. And then an idea occurred to me. Hey, Suze, can you do me a quick favor while I go grab a few things from my desk? Can you look up an address for me? I need to add it to a file I was working on, so whomever covers my shifts this week can follow up. That was a good enough excuse. Of course. Susie rushed to open a new search for me. I gave her Geoff's name as casually as possible and went into the cubicles to collect the running clothes I normally left at work. They needed a wash more than anything. So in that one respect only, this was a good thing. I glanced at my desk, at the few personal possessions I had. A picture of my sister and me. My massive purple coffee mug. I left them there. After all, I intended to be back soon. This time as I moved through the precinct, I allowed people to hug me. They offered their condolences and gave me strange, sad smiles. It didn't mean anything to me. Because I was going to fix everything, and then this day would never happen. See you guys in a week or so. Let us know when the funeral is, please. I'd like to go, Tommy said. I'd known him for years from my time in the precinct, and he was one of the tough guys. I would never have pegged him as a person to support me at a time like this. But here he was, giving me an awkward smile and a pat on the shoulder. For a moment, I let appreciation fill my soul. Thanks. Will do, I lied. There would be no funeral. My sister was alive in an alternate universe, and it was time to make that one and this one parallel once again. I took my bag and keys and made my way back to Susie at the front desk. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. Here you go, Sarah. I found an address and a phone number. Do you want me to pass it on to the next detective, or? I grabbed the information and folded the paper in half. No. I'll take care of it. Thanks, Suze. The light of understanding dawned in her eyes, then she simply nodded and smiled. Any time. I took an extra moment to smile at her, finally feeling a small sense of support for my time-hopping skills from those around me. She wouldn't rat me out. I knew she wouldn't. I could tell by the way her eyes turned sympathetic as she watched me leave. I went straight to my bike, loading my stuff into the storage case mounted behind the seat. Then I took out the piece of paper Susie gave me. A local number. Perfect. I switched my phone to silent and called the number I'd been given. Geoff Wolf. Where had I heard that name before? A voicemail answered, and a pleasant male voice with a slight English accent said his name, nothing else, and then the beep sounded. To leave a message or not? Couldn't hurt, I suppose. Hello, Geoff, this is Sarah, of the ICPD. My sister was killed last night, and I was told to call you. Please get back to me at 212-555-7890. Thank you. I hung up and slipped my phone into the back pocket of my work pants. The last thing I intended to do was go home and arrange my sister's funeral. I had a lead, and I was going for it. I hopped onto my bike, and instead of going home, I rode the 20 minutes to the address Susie had given me. When I arrived outside an abandoned, run-down shop, I checked the address on the paper again. 199 Fakoma. I glanced up, citing the worn numbers on the building in front of me. 199. Yes, definitely the right address. But this place looked as if it hadn't been inhabited in years. Decades even. The windows and door were broken and had been barred shut with pieces of wood nailed over the openings. I took out my cell and shot a message to Geoff's number. I glanced around, a huge sigh leaving my body as I rested the bike on the kickstand. This sucked. The waiting. Especially when I had no idea why I was even here. Hopefully someone would get back to me, like now. And I could find out why Stacy had sent me in search of this guy. Had he been there at the party last night? Or was his involvement in my sister's death something else altogether? Chapter 4. I got sick of waiting for what appeared to be a no-show, so eventually I drove home to decompress and get changed into more comfortable clothes. Less work-like and more me. Then I began to clean, a rather useful anxiety-driven habit I'd picked up from my mother's side of the family. I began with the kitchen, wiping down every surface and throwing out weeks of leftover takeout and old fruit from the fridge. Once the whole kitchen was spotless, I looked around for more to do. Because if I wasn't cleaning or doing something to occupy myself, then the thoughts I'd been pushing down began to circle up from the drain. The thoughts I couldn't deal with. My sister was dead. She really was. There was no pretending she wasn't. I'd have to start arranging her funeral if I couldn't figure out a way to prevent her murder from happening. But how could I get around the chief? He'd never said no to me before. Not that I'd ever really asked anything for myself. That wasn't my style. Perhaps I should just find the place and time myself, and hop anyway? Without permission. I frowned and scrubbed the kitchen counters for a second time. I had to be careful doing things with time hopping that I had no experience with. I didn't know the consequences, nor the dangers of hopping backwards. I needed more information if it was going to be successful. There was only one thing to do, and that was to go back into the office and talk to the chief again. Surely he'd see reason this time. After all, what I was proposing was no different to what the ICPD did every single day. We prevented murders through time hopping. We just normally went forward, not back. I was paid to do it, so why couldn't I use my skills, my job, to finally help someone I actually knew and loved? I moved to the bathroom, picking up the tile spray and squirting the toxic purple liquid everywhere. My eyes burned from the waft of chemicals that rose up, and I wiped at the tears that flowed down my face. I couldn't bury my sister. I couldn't. Not her. Not after everything we'd been through burying our parents. I didn't have the strength to do it all again. On my own. I turned on the bathroom fan to help with the pungent smell and blasted the shower with hot water, some of it splashing onto my t-shirt and old jeans. Great. That would probably leave bleached-out marks on the fabric. Why couldn't I just go back in time and stop Amanda's murder? Surely it would help the greater good. I wasn't being entirely selfish. Preventing murders was my job. To catch would-be killers was what I did every day. I threw the cleaning rag down and washed my hands, the smell of the chemicals permeating my very skin. I really needed to start using rubber gloves. I had to go back to the office and talk to my boss. His rules, the ICPD regulations, were not making sense. I'd never really thought about them before. I'd just taken them as routine. Why could we go forward in time but not back, beyond returning to the current time, of course? I changed my dirty cleaning clothes and put on my going-out jeans and a black top that I knew made my body look fit and strong. The last thing I wanted to do was use my looks or body to get what I wanted. But dressing in my boring police gear hadn't worked for me this morning, so it was time to try something different. Plus, I was on bereavement leave. I had to at least pretend that I wasn't working. I headed back to the precinct and arrived there in record time. The middle of the day was so much better for traffic. Even on a Saturday. When I walked back in, my signature leather jacket keeping the cold out, I could feel the change in the room. I wasn't always a cop. Before they'd accepted me into the Time Hoppers Academy, I'd been a bounty hunter for a while. I knew there was something about me that people found unsettling, dangerous. I tried not to play into that side of myself, but it was thrumming through my blood today, and those in the building appeared uneasy as I made my way through to the chief's office. "Hey, Chief. Can I talk to you for a sec?" I called out as Alex stepped out of his office with his head down. He looked up at me with a surprised scowl descending over his features. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" He seemed angry with me, but the anger wasn't warranted. I hadn't done anything wrong. What was he worried about? I moved toward his office and quirked my head. I just wanted to extend my leave an extra few days and ask some questions in regards to the, funeral. If that's okay? Everyone in the cubicles around us went very quiet, obviously listening to everything that was being said. "Yeah. Sure," he said, as it was the only thing he could say. Unless he wanted to look like a major dick in front of everyone. As soon as we were inside his office, I shut the door, my arms trembling with adrenaline and nervous energy. My stomach jumped and tightened in my gut like a rabbit. He was going to say no again, I could tell already. But I had to ask. I had to know for sure that they weren't leaving me any other choice but to go my own way on this one. "Please sit down, Sarah," he invited, and of course I did, trying to make this as comfortable for both of us as possible. "You said that you want to extend your leave, but I don't think that's the real reason you've come to talk to me, is it?" I shook my head. "No. I want to put in a formal request to be allowed back into the time loop. This is my sister. I can't just let her crime go unpunished. Why should we be allowed to go forward in time, but not back? It doesn't make sense. Her killer should be caught before he or she hurts anyone else. The chief listened as I spoke, but then leaned forward and put his hands on the desk. Sarah, we aren't God. We can't undo what has already been done. We can't pretend things that have happened didn't happen. That's not what this program is about. We prevent crimes, we do not undo. Imagine how we'd spend our days if we did. We'd be undoing every accidental death and crime that was reported the day before, with unknown consequences to the timeline. There were parts of his argument that I agreed with, but I couldn't let this go. This was my sister. Chief, My phone began to vibrate in my back pocket, the tinkling sound filling the air around me. I pulled out the cell, knowing that I was being rude doing so, but I was waiting on several unanswered calls from this morning, and it could be important. I looked at the number and didn't recognize it as any of my sister's friends. But still. Excuse me for a minute. I stood up and walked out of his office and down the nearest corridor to grab a bit of privacy and quiet. Hello. This is Sarah. Sarah. This is Geoff Wolf. The man had an English accent. Hope flared in my heart. Geoff, thank you for calling me back. Can you meet me at a diner tonight? 8 o'clock? I blinked. Talk about getting straight to the point. Of course. Where? I could jump if he asked me to. I had no work, technically, and a major problem to solve. If this man could help me, then I'd travel to wherever he wanted me to go. He reeled off an address I didn't know, but I committed it to memory, then put it straight into my Maps app once he hung up. There was no point going back in to talk to the chief. Clearly, he was never going to change his mind. I'd already known that. The laws and the rules were there to keep everyone safe, and the chief was a stickler for keeping everything in line. But for once, I wasn't going to let them tell me what I could and couldn't do. My sister was worth so much more to me than following the rules. If I were being honest, I'd really come here to make sure I was doing the right thing going off on my own. I shook my head. I'd never thought I'd choose Amanda over my job. But here I was, willing to go against everything I'd worked for to get her back. I may as well throw that promotion right out the window. Thanks, Chief. See you next week then. I stuck my head into his office and waved at him, then left. The rest of the day passed slowly as I'd already cleaned my whole apartment and I was itching to go meet this Geoff person. When the sun began to set, I took off toward the destined meeting place. I was early, but I couldn't wait any longer. And besides, the diner was in a sketchy part of town that I didn't know well, so it was sensible to allow extra time to get there and scope the place out a little. I parked my bike right out the front so I could keep an eye on it, and the chances of it being stolen were lower. Then I took a deep breath, not knowing what I was about to face, and walked inside. The moment I stepped foot on the old linoleum, I knew who Geoff was immediately. There was a hardness to him that was missing in the other occupants of the diner, which was especially notable when he stood up and beckoned to me from across the room. I straightened my spine and walked across the sticky floor to sit opposite him in the booth he'd acquired. Interesting that I was early, but he was still here before me. We didn't speak at first, but his obvious inner toughness, intelligent blue eyes and roughened, whisker-covered jaw called to me on a primitive level, a level I'd stopped listening to a long time ago. Geoff Wolf was damn attractive, and it annoyed me that I noticed that. I'd assumed he'd be older, unattractive, geeky for some reason. But I'd been very wrong. Thanks for meeting me, Geoff. He waved a hand at me, stopping my speech. Let's order. It was just now 8 p.m., and this place was quiet. Too quiet for peak mealtime on a Saturday night. Maybe that was an indication of the quality of the food. I played it safe and ordered a burger. Geoff was calm, eerily so. I couldn't wait to get into the conversation, but he took forever to peruse the menu and finally order. A menu I had a strange suspicion he knew inside out. So why was he playing hard to get? When the pimple-faced waiter walked away after taking our order, I finally leaned across the table. My sister's friend, Stacy, recommended I call you. Shush, we can't speak freely just yet. Wait another minute or two. I forced myself to stop talking with real effort. What in hell was he waiting for? I stared around, searching for evidence that someone was listening or watching us. No one seemed interested in us at all. The silence between us went on for a long, drawn-out pause that ticked over into several minutes, not one or two. My patience, already almost non-existent, was in tatters by the time the waiter eventually brought our drinks. I grabbed my coffee with 2 hands. Finally, Geoff signaled that I could speak. Okay. Go ahead. I wanted to ask what had changed between 10 minutes ago to now, but bit my tongue. That would be a wasted conversation. My sister was murdered last night. Her body turned up at an undisclosed location this morning. I'm in the NYPD, a time hopper. But they won't give me any details on what happened or how. I'm trying to track her movements through her friends, but they're not speaking either. Stacy told me to call you if I wanted help, so I did. Geoff nodded slowly, keeping his intense gaze on me. You want to time hop back to last night and stop her murder? Finally, a man who got me. Yes, of course I do. I've spent my whole career catching criminals and bad guys. Preventing innocent people from dying every single day. It doesn't make sense to me that I should just let this one go. Geoff took a sip of his water and waited as our food was placed down in front of us. I examined my burger with a critical eye. Despite the lack of patronage in the diner, the overall meal looked good. And it smelled, well, great. I can help you, Sarah. You can? A strange amount of relief poured through me. With a side of shock. No one had wanted to help me today. Until now. I'd been avoided, ignored, or shut down. And my boss had been angry for no discernible reason. I can. But you have to realize what is required of you, if I help you. You'll be a fugitive and your sister will always be on the run. That added to my confusion. I don't need help with the time hop. I simply need to go back and get her. Save her from whoever hurt her. No one need know it happened. And to do that, I need to know where and when. Geoff looked at me with a strange expression that I couldn't read. You're focusing on the wrong things in this, for lack of a better word, investigation. I had to ask, of course. Since he seemed to know what he was talking about. What should I be focusing on, then? Why your sister died in the first place. The diner experience was more than frustrating. I didn't get a lot more from Geoff, except the knowledge that if I did call on his help, there would be consequences. I slept badly all night, plagued by dreams that had me waking with a racing heart and sweat dotting my brow. Getting out of bed the next morning after such fractured sleep was hard. For once, I didn't regret the slow start to my Sunday and took some time, letting Geoff's words sink in. I had assumed that my sister's death had been an opportunistic and unplanned event, perhaps rooted in passion or momentary rage. Or perhaps it had even been an accident. I hadn't really let myself dwell on the specifics of the how too much. Maybe she'd fallen from a balcony when drunk? Or a possessive gorilla she'd been flirting with had choked the life out of her. The why hadn't been high up on my priority list to work out either. I was pretty sure I could go back and prevent it all from happening, so I didn't see the point in dwelling on the painful, perhaps horrible way my sister had died, nor the reason for it. But as I pushed myself to ponder Geoff's question, my brain couldn't seem to stay on topic long enough to think of any nefarious reasons why my sister would be killed. Sure, I thought she was a royal pain in the ass a lot of the time, but that was very much my sisterly, lifelong biased view. Pretty much anyone else who knew Amanda loved her. Or at least loved how they felt when they were with her. She was fun and quirky, and played much dumber than she actually was. Which made others around her feel good about themselves. So, who on earth would want her dead? And why? In the end, I picked up my cell and called Geoff at the number I'd confirmed with him last night was his. Hello. He answered quickly, almost as if he was waiting for my call. I shivered. There was something about his English accent that was a little too sexy. Geoff, it's Sarah, from last night at the diner. Yes, I know. How can I help you? His slightly clipped tone made me smile, despite the seriousness of the situation. The man didn't like to waste time, that was for sure. I've been thinking about what you said last night, and I was wondering if you could help me figure out why Amanda was killed. His answer came straight back, fast as a whip. No. I can't. That's not my role. I can help you get her back, but I can't solve her crime. I rolled my eyes heavenward. Seriously? Why ask me a question when you had no intention of helping me work out the answer? Obviously, I would have to solve this crime on my own. No one else wanted to help me. But Geoff was right about one thing. I did need to find out why my sister had died. I was the cop. I'd done it hundreds of times before. But why did Stacy suggest I call you if you don't want to help me? I'd assumed getting his help meant he could help me get Amanda back and stop her killer, but if that wasn't his shtick, then at least he could help me in one regard. I can get your sister back, Sarah. And I'm willing to do so. But as I told you last night, there are major consequences of doing it my way. He was right, of course. And they were consequences that my sister would not like, and if I were honest, I wasn't sure I could live with them either. Going on the run with my sister as fugitives for the rest of our lives was not my idea of a good time. Not if there was another way. And to figure that out, I needed to know more about what happened and why. If I could just focus, get my tired brain to work, perhaps I could work out why she died. Maybe you're right. I need to find out why she died before I move forward with anything else. Thank you for your offer, Geoff. No problem. He hung up and I stared at the phone. Wow. He was truly serious about not helping me with this part. I was on my own. I opened up my contact list to call Stacy again. Someone at the bachelorette party must have seen something and be willing to talk to me. My finger paused over the button. Should I call her now? Or wait until tomorrow? A Monday? It would be much easier to visit people at home or at work. Ask them questions straight to their faces. I got online and scrolled through the social media posts my sister's friends had put up over the last few days. There were a lot of Rip Amanda posts, which I angrily scrolled past, trying to ignore any signs that my sister was actually gone. Because as far as I was concerned, she wasn't. Not when it was in my power to simply bring her back. Then I found the night of the bachelorette party. A huge album of photos overflowing several pages on Facebook and Instagram. I took out a notepad and made some notes on who was in the photos that featured Amanda. At least 10 girls I knew, some I didn't. I'd question Stacy about them all tomorrow. Her wedding wasn't for another couple of weeks, so she'd still be around. That was definitely the plan. I went to bed that night with a clear head and a decisive path ahead. Chapter 5. I allowed myself to sleep in the next day, deliberately not setting my alarm and waking to a bunch of text messages from people at work. Tessa and Joe, two of my closest friends. Suze and Sandra as well. All well-meaning condolence messages. Asking when the funeral was, wanting to come and support me. Well, there wasn't going to be a funeral. For one, they hadn't released my sister's body to me, and two, I was going to stop all this from happening. I didn't answer any of them. I needed to focus on my goal, not get bogged down with all their emotional mess. I rolled out of bed, showered and dressed in skin-tight leather pants and a red crop top that would brightly clash with my hair. Power dressing, they called it. For me, when it was necessary, when I was a bounty hunter, I dressed to stand out. To shock and intimidate. I brushed out my long hair and grabbed something to eat. No run for me today. I was on another mission. There were 4 girls I needed to question, starting with the bachelorette, Stacy. She may have pointed me in the direction of Geoff, but I had the feeling she knew a lot more than she was letting on. After a quick check on Facebook, where Stacy had already posted about being at home all day doing wedding preparations, I set off for her apartment. When I knocked on the door, I could hear the blaring of some new song on the radio. Yep, she was home. Then the door swung open, and Stacy's welcoming smile died on her lips when she saw me. Sarah. She wasn't happy I was here, that was clear. I'd known Stacy since she'd shared sandwiches with my sister in grade school. So the cold reception, especially in the circumstances, was not expected. Neither was the fact that she didn't seem overly cut up about Amanda dying at her bachelorette party. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pushed a smile to my lips. Can I come in? When she looked like she was about to say no, I pushed on the door and walked into the apartment without waiting for permission. I glanced around the apartment, trying to stay calm, though my heart beat in my chest like a bongo drum. This is a nice place. Amanda said it was, but I hadn't seen it for myself. All the fittings were new. Kitchen, carpet, furnishings. It was straight out of some high-priced magazine. Suited the pretentious Stacy right down to a T. Thanks for connecting me with Geoff, but that's a dead end. I can't use him. You can't, she asked, her voice sounding only vaguely interested. She was still standing by the closed front door, obviously hoping I'd leave, which was ridiculously suspicious. This girl knew me well. She'd spent many a hungover night at my place, and she's been friends with Amanda forever. Why was she giving me the cold shoulder? Her behavior didn't make sense. I sat down on the expensive leather couch and made myself comfortable, crossing my legs and stretching my arms out on either side of the back of the couch, making my presence bigger, wanting to push her discomfort. I stared at her, my head screaming with the irony of it all. Why did Amanda's best friend not seem to even care that she'd been killed? Sarah. I have to meet my fiancé for lunch at his work in an hour, and I need to get ready. She did want me to leave. Well, this was getting interesting. Oh, no problem. I only have one question, so if you could sit down for a minute, I'll get out of your hair pretty quickly. I flashed her a smile and watched her sit slowly, well, more like perch, on the couch opposite me. She was ready to fly off if I made a move. What did you want to know? She met my gaze, but her usually shiny eyes were flat, dull, anxious. I just need some clarification on the events surrounding my sister's death. Times and places, so I can work out what happened to her. After all, she's my only family. You know that. I can't just let her killer get away with this. Stacy took a deep breath, her gaze shooting off to the side, and then she began to answer as though reciting a rehearsed speech. Amanda got to my place about 6. We all left for Stone Stud around 7:30. Stellar came out with us, and he was wearing his leather boots with the studs in them. He looked really good. Even Amanda thought he was hot. I nodded my head as she spoke, surprised by the strange details she was recalling for me. This was just plain weird. And what happened after that? Stacy's brow furrowed. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Had they been that blind drunk, they seriously couldn't remember where they'd gone afterwards. Stacy bit her lip, still looking at the pale carpet. I don't think Amanda was there after that. We kept drinking, moved on to a bar down the street. But she wasn't there for that part. She must have left with someone without telling us. Although my sister could be extremely stupid when it came to men and her own safety, I didn't see her ditching the bachelorette party so early. So, you remember seeing her around 7:30 at Stone Stud, but not after that? Stacy nodded vaguely, not meeting my gaze. That, at least, was a start. Someone else had to know something. Thanks, Stacy. I'll let you get back to your lunch plans. Lunch plans? She asked, her brows narrowing with confusion as she finally met my eyes. With your fiancé? I reminded her of her lie. Oh, yes. Thanks, Sarah. She showed me out, and I got right on the phone to the next person on my list. Madison. She'd be at work, at a little fashion boutique a few blocks from here. I decided I may as well walk, since it wasn't far. And it gave me time to think about the strange account of the night that Stacy had given me. She seriously couldn't remember seeing my sister past 8 o'clock? But she knew the boots a certain guy had been wearing? A guy I'd never heard of before. Who the heck was Stellar? If I was time-hopping back to stop the murder, I was following fashion trends, it seemed, and not clues. I arrived at Maddie's shop and looked through the window. The blonde bombshell was inside, helping customers and smiling happily. Just like Stacy, as if one of her best friends hadn't just been killed literally a couple nights ago. Like her world was normal, fine. Resilience was a trait I'd never given Maddie enough credit for. You wouldn't even know by looking at her that anything untoward had happened at all. I pushed open the door and the bell above my head chimed to let her know someone had arrived. Once again, the smile on one of my sister's friends' faces died the moment she saw me. And it wasn't with the strained pity that I should be seeing. I'd even take pain and guilt over what I saw. This was something else. And it was ugly. She forced a smile to her lips as her gaze swept my unusual ensemble of clothes. Sarah. It's good to see you. I've been meaning to contact you in regards to the funeral. Oh, had she now? Nice to see you too, Maddie. Have you got a minute to answer a question or two for me about the other night? I've gotta work, Sarah. I smiled right back at her. The way they were all acting, you'd think they were the ones who had killed Amanda. But if that were true, the cops wouldn't be denying me details. I know, Maddie, this'll only take a minute or two. I stood by the side of her desk and stepped into the opening that led her into the shop. It stopped her from rushing away, which I had the feeling she had been planning on doing. I just want to know what happened the night Amanda died. Where you guys went on your pub crawl, and when was the last place you saw her? Oh, Maddie's eyes glazed over, as though she were remembering something from the distant past. Amanda got to Stacy's place about 6. We all left for Stone Stud around 7:30. Stellar came out with us, and he was wearing his leather boots with the studs on them. I blinked and continued to stare at Maddie. Had she just repeated word for word what Stacy told me? Or more accurately, recited? It was virtually impossible for people who were telling the truth to have identical stories. There were always embellishments, different details. It was scientifically proven that people always recounted an event in totally different ways, depending on their own perceptions and expectations. Even when they were telling the absolute truth, their brains just picked things up differently. I took a breath, trying to slow the maddening thump of my heart. All right. Where did she go after that? What bar did you guys go to next? Just someplace down the street. I don't know the name of it. We got pretty drunk that night. I don't really remember Amanda being there at all. This was getting frustrating. I thought Amanda had better friends than this. What do you mean you don't know where she was? Don't you guys look after each other better than that? Normally, yes. But Amanda's always been one to do whatever she wanted. Look, Sarah. I've got to get back to work. She pushed past me and I decided to let her go. She wasn't telling me anything new, and if I had to, I'd come back and drag her down the street to the pub and make her show me where they'd gone. So far it seemed like my sister's story stopped at the Stone Stud. But since when had she ever been one to duck out of a party early? I just didn't believe them. Okay. Thanks, Maddie. I left the shop more confused than when I'd first walked in. This whole situation didn't make sense, not at all. I picked up the phone and rang 2 other girls who were there that night. They recited the same story, almost word for word, which I knew to be impossible. Impossible. And yet, that's exactly how they described the night. How could they all be so totally clueless and glib? Their friend had died. No one seemed to care that Amanda was gone, and that made it so much worse. Where was the misery, the regret, the pain? So many things weren't adding up in relation to Amanda's death, and if I didn't know better, I'd think these women were the ones behind it. I went home, miserable and deflated. When I got there, I cuddled my perfect purple pussycat, and if her fur ran wet with my tears, I tried to ignore that fact. I was getting nowhere in an investigation that no one except me was trying to investigate, in a murder that no one seemed to care about. But Amanda was my sister, and I wasn't giving up that easily. We were at the lake house with Mom and Dad. Just like we always were when we were kids. Amanda was swimming in the lake, I was sure. I walked through the old house but didn't hear anything. Were Mom and Dad around? No, they couldn't be. They're gone. Aren't they? I couldn't really remember. The kitchen was abandoned. The once new appliances were now a tarnished bronze. Where was everyone? My thoughts were so fuzzy, I couldn't quite figure out what was happening. Sunshine streamed in the windows. Foggy yellow light. I needed fresh air. A salty breeze would be nice, but we didn't get that at the lake. Only at the beach. I could hear splashing and turned toward the patio. Amanda must have been out there. I could feel her. She was probably swimming in the lake like she always enjoyed. I should go see her. Check she's okay. I moved out the door and onto the patio, shielding my eyes from the bright sun with my hand. There she was. Amanda. I waved and called out to her. She was in the water, a fuzzy vision in the bright sunshine, so I walked down to the water's edge. Come in. I waved my hands to encourage her to come ashore. I wanted to talk to her, and I couldn't remember why. Amanda yelled out to me, but the words didn't make sense. Huh? What? I couldn't make them out, even though she was yelling. What was she trying to tell me? It seemed important. Come in and tell me. Please. I can't hear you. But she was fading away. Disappearing from view. Amanda. I woke up with a start, my heart racing and sweat covering my skin. I gasped for air and ran my hands over my face and through my hair. What a freaking nightmare. It had seemed so real, so vivid in every way. I'd loved that lake house we'd gone to every summer since I was in kindergarten. But the dream wasn't real. Amanda was dead. My sister was gone. And they wouldn't let me go back in time to save her. It didn't make sense. Any of it. But especially the fact that all the stories were the same. How could this happen? Despite the fact that it was literally impossible to have identical stories after a crime, these were her friends. Women who'd known her for over a decade. How could they care so little that she'd been wiped off the face of the planet? They couldn't be behind her murder, could they? There was another explanation, I supposed, but it seemed so improbable. Was it possible that they had all been coached into saying what they did? There really wasn't another plausible reason why they'd have such identical descriptions of what occurred that night. Word for word. Down to the boots on a guy who likely had nothing to do with my sister's killer. Unless he did? Who knew at this point? Obviously not her friends. I glanced at the clock. 7 a.m. It was too early to go back and talk to the girls again. But I wouldn't give up that easily. Surely they'd fold under enough pressure if I kept turning up and applying it. I rolled out of bed and had a long, hot shower, despite the fact I intended to go for a run. I stunk of sweat and the stress of my nightmare. My mind still flashed false memories of my sister screaming to me. What had Amanda been trying to tell me? Nothing, obviously. She was at the city morgue. I had to find out what had happened the night she was killed. I pulled on my running gear and did my usual circuit, pushing myself to jump higher than normal. Run faster than I always did. I was full of adrenaline and ready for action by the time I returned home. Someone had to know what had happened to her. I showered again, more quickly this time, then changed into my leggings and a short tight dress before mounting my motorcycle. The ride through the city was quick, thanks to my sleek bike's ability to coast around traffic. I was on leave. I was no police officer this week. Normally I followed the rules, stayed behind the cars. Not today. So, thanks to my dodging and swerving, I found myself at the foot of Stacy's building in record time. I didn't know why Amanda's best friend of 15 years would lie to me about something as important as murder, but I damn sure intended to find out. I locked my helmet to my motorcycle seat and entered the posh lobby of the apartment building. I'd struggled to get up to see Stacy the other day, due to the elevator security, and in the end I'd only managed it because someone else from the building had turned up at the same time, and I'd swanned past the concierge clothes on the other person's heels. Perhaps I should just take the stairs this time. Or maybe not. 20 flights up might be too much for my legs, considering the run this morning, and these more expensive buildings tended to have the added security of card access at all levels, even in the stairwells. Luckily, an older couple entered the building at that moment, having been out for some exercise, judging by their workout gear. I did the same as last time, ghosting them to slide by the concierge and into the elevator. Once there, I pressed Stacy's floor. The sing-song elevator music filled my head as we ascended to the top levels of the building. She'd done well snagging such a rich guy. Not my style, but for a girl like Stacy, she'd be pleased to have landed such a big fish. Now she just had to keep him. My foot tapped against the floor, making a clunking noise. I really needed better boots. When the elevator shuddered to a stop and the doors slid open, I walked out with a determination as hard as the floor beneath my feet. Stacy was going to tell me the truth today. I knocked on the door and Stacy answered within moments, her smile dying on her face the second she saw me. I was getting a bit sick of that look, but I suppose the longer I was on the police force, the more I'd see it. "Hey Stace. Mind if I come in for a minute?" I forced an artificial brightness into my voice and walked straight past her and into the swanky apartment. She made distressed noises as though she wanted to stop me. Too bad. She wasn't stopping me today. "Sarah, I have to." I whirled on her and gave her a hard stare. "You have to what, Stacy? Make up somewhere you need to be, because you want me out of the way while you cover up my sister's murder? I'm sorry, but no, I will not excuse you. You or anyone else who is lying about what happened that night." Stacy blinked several times, spluttering and gasping, then crossed her arms over her lacy white tank top. She couldn't look at me, and that made me more aggressive. I walked forward slowly, one step at a time, crowding into her space. "Who was it, Stacy? Who asked you to cover up my sister's murder? Who gave you your lines about the night and the guy with the boots?" Stacy took a few steps back, trying to avoid me. The weight of my small handgun strapped to my ankle, hidden in my leather boot, kept me calm. "Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about." I took out my police badge and placed it on the glass dining table. "Stacy, I'm a cop. A good cop. I love my job and I'm relentless when it comes to finding out who's done the wrong thing and bringing them to justice. I will not bury Amanda and just get on with my life. Do you understand me?" Stacy nodded slowly, then her bottom lip started quivering. "But, Sarah." I gave her a hard stare. "Come on, Stacy. Tell me the truth." She shook her head slowly, tears glossing up her big blue eyes. "I can't tell you, Sarah. I can't." I knew it. There was something devious in play. "Yes, you can, Stacy. You can tell me everything. Especially if it's the honest truth about how my sister died." I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it tight. "Stace, please. You were friends with her for so long. Tell me how to find Amanda's killer." Stacy's blue eyes welled up and tears slid down her cheeks. "You don't understand, Sarah. I really can't tell you much. I don't know everything. Stacy, anything you can say will help me. I know it will. I'm at a complete loss at the moment as to why everyone is covering this up. But I swear to whatever God watches over all of us, I'll find the truth, Stace. One way or another." Stacy pulled one hand out of my grasp and wiped at her damp face. They said they'd hurt my family if I said anything. I wanted to growl and yell in frustration. They'd killed my sister. I won't tell anyone, Stacy, I promise. They can torture me for days. I don't have anyone left for them to threaten. If you help me, I will never tell them it was you. On my life. I put a hand to my heart. Stacy nodded and sniffed. I only know one thing. They called him the Beetle. I don't know why, and I never met him. But the name stuck in my head. I had no idea if that information would come in handy or not, but it was still a step in the right direction. What about the night itself? Did you really not see my sister after 7:30? With time hopping, the exact time was extremely important. She shook her head. She didn't come with us. And I think it was around 7:30. Honestly, I don't know. We were so drunk, and I think our drinks were spiked because none of us remember much, and we woke up the next day with the same story in our heads. Some guy talking to us. Telling us what happened. I don't know anything else. I'm so sorry, Sarah. This time Stacy actually sobbed, the pain and misery I'd been expecting from the start of this quest finally coming through. Are you sure you don't know anything else? She shook her head. No. The Beetle, a guy I think. And the memory. I don't know why we left without her. Amanda would never have let us go on without her. I squeezed the hand I still held and let it go. This was only one very small piece of the puzzle. But at least I had an edge to work with now. Thank you, Stacy. She sniffed and pulled her other hand from my grasp. I really do have to go, Sarah. I have my final dress fitting today. I picked up my badge and slid it back into a pocket in my leather jacket. No problem, I understand. Good luck with your big day. I'm sure my sister would have loved to have been there. Another tear rolled down Stacy's cheek, and for the first time I saw true grief in her eyes. Yeah, me too. I nodded at the bride-to-be and left her apartment, unable to comprehend exactly what I'd just uncovered. A beetle? The beetle? Was he the killer? Then it hit me. He was the one who gave them all the story to recite to me, the police, to everyone. He was also the one to threaten them, if Stacy was to be believed, but I did trust her on that one. Amanda's friends were acting too strangely not to be consumed with either fear or guilt. Which meant this Beetle guy was heavily involved in whatever cover-up was going down. I stepped into the hallway and rode the elevator down to the first floor, working out what to do next. My friends at the precinct weren't going to help me. They'd say I coerced the information from Stacy. That I was blinded by grief. So there was only one person I could go to with this information. And that could mean breaking all the rules. But I didn't have a choice. It had to be Geoff. Chapter 6. I climbed back onto my motorcycle with anger whirling in my gut. Somehow, I seemed to have uncovered a truly well-set-up operation. With a handler, a killer, and someone to wipe away all evidence of the crime. Would they have people in the police department, or worst of all, the Intertime Police Department itself? Because that was how it felt to me. There was only one way to find out though, and that was to dig even deeper. I started the bike and headed over to the diner where I'd met Geoff a few nights ago. There was only a small chance he'd be there, but if he wasn't, I had his direct number. And the ride would clear my head. 15 minutes in mild traffic and I was there. Lo and behold, Geoff was sitting in the restaurant, laptop in front of him and a coffee in one hand. Coffee, yes. My head had started to throb a little this morning, but due to the lack of time hops for me over the past few days, my headaches were minimal. The chime above the door tinkled as I walked inside, and Geoff's head swung around, unerringly connecting our gazes. Damn, he was hot. Why couldn't he be as unattractive as everyone else around me? I didn't have the time or inclination for anything like that. At least, not until I managed to rescue my sister and set things right once again. I swallowed down the unprofessional heat that tingled in my throat and walked up next to his table. "Hey, Geoff. Was wondering if you'd still be here." His smile was slow but finally arrived on his face. "I work from here often. It's quiet, and I know the owners." I nodded. "And it's far enough away from everything else, you can easily hide from the world." He inclined his head as though to agree, but didn't say anything. "Can I sit down?" He nodded and tapped a few keys on his laptop before shoving it to the side, giving me his full attention. "How novel." "Sure. How can I help you today?" "Mind if I order a coffee first?" "No problem." Geoff made some hand gestures toward his own cup and grinned at me. "It'll be here in a minute." He definitely knew how this place ran. "Okay, well, I've been thinking about what you said the other night, and I've decided I want to go ahead with your plan. I want to do everything I can to help my sister." My coffee arrived and I nursed the mug in my hand. Geoff nodded with a look on his face that said he'd expected me to say exactly that. "I understand you've been a time cop for a long time now, but this is very different from anything you've experienced before. Going back in time for selfish reasons has consequences." Being called selfish slapped my ego in the weirdest way. I had to breathe and push away that voice that said it wasn't selfish. It was for Amanda. But the truth was, it was also for me. Because I couldn't bear to be alone in this world, with my parents and my sister gone. So instead, I focused on the other parts of his sentence that deserved attention. "Consequences," he'd said. I imagined there would be, as meddling in the past could literally change the timeline going forward. But I didn't know them all, so may as well ask someone who knew more than I did. "What sort of consequences are you referring to?" I'm sure he could hear my resolve in my tone. I didn't really care what his answer would be, nor what the consequences were. "I'd do anything to save my sister. It can take away from your own lifespan." I had just lifted my coffee mug toward my mouth and froze halfway there. "What?" I'd never heard of such a thing before. We'd always been told that time hopping was perfectly safe for those who did it correctly. That's what they meant at the academy, about time hopping in accordance with the laws of physics. I'd never considered breaking the law before, so I hadn't even thought about the consequences of going against the authorities on the topic. "Go on." "Time hopping forward has no consequence on our own lives because the time hasn't passed. The rules and regulations say that everything happens at once as time passes, so our own lifespan isn't affected. But by breaking the law and going backwards, your own life could be affected." I hung on every word, amazed that I'd never fully considered the consequences of going back in time versus going forward. No wonder there were laws against it. Despite the fact that you could alter history permanently, it was pretty obvious what he was saying. The time hopper could die as a result. Not that it mattered in this case. Not with me. I had nothing left to lose, including my own life. So you have to ask yourself, Sarah, is going back in time to get your sister back worth the risk? Worth your own life? I didn't even need to think about that. Of course it is. She's worth it. Geoff sighed and muttered, "I knew you were going to say that." Then he nodded and looked me straight in the eye, my stomach doing a flip-flop of sorts as I stared into the dark depths of his gaze. "Then let's proceed with the training." "Training? What training?" I looked at him with what I assumed was an entirely perplexed expression. "What do you mean?" "I did all the training I needed at the academy for time hopping, and I've been certified and working full-time in the field for 5 years now." Geoff took a sip of his coffee, and I tapped my fingers on the table in frustration. He had an annoyingly slow approach about him, and his patience seemed to know no bounds. That wasn't something I possessed. "Sarah, this is very different. In your job as a time hopper with the police department, you are protected by the rules and regulations that were drawn up decades ago when time hopping became commonplace. In this, you will be on your own. You're going against the altruistic reasons time hopping was established, and instead venturing into the past for purely selfish reasons. That will require training. My ego took a brutal hit when he said once again that I was doing this for my own personal, selfish reasons. My face flushed with heat, and I wanted to curl my fingers into fists and dig my nails into the fleshy pad of my thumb. But I controlled my emotions as much as I could. Because he was right. This was selfish. I was the only one who seemed to want my sister back, and I was willing to break the rules to do it. Yes, I am selfish. I'll accept that, but surely this has been done by time hoppers 1,000 times before? Who wouldn't want to undo a vicious crime if they knew about one? My mind began to whirl, and I wondered about the truth of what Geoff was saying. I've never been told any of this before, so how do I know that you're telling the truth, Geoff? What credentials do you have to be handing out this sort of advice? Let alone demanding I do some sort of training with you? I barely knew anything about this guy, and my stomach was beginning to clench in an unwelcome way as I felt my grip on my existing life slip out of my fingers. How do I know this isn't all bullshit? Geoff's eyebrows lowered over his big blue eyes. Pardon me? You're the one who came to me, Sarah. I'm telling you everything I know, and I'm willing to help you achieve your goals. Something that you well know is completely against the law. And yet you know how to do it, and the possible consequences of such a law-breaking activity. What were you in your past life, Geoff? A time hopper gone rogue? He glared at me for so long that I finally saw the hurt behind his expression. Had I unintentionally hit on a scar? An inner truth he didn't want exposed? His lips remained sealed, and I found myself once again willing to trust him. After all, what choice did I have? Everyone else seemed to be having a good time just ignoring my tragedy and getting on with his or her life. I took a deep breath and pushed my coffee mug away. It was still too hot to drink anyway. I'm sorry, Geoff. You're right. I did come to you for help. I didn't mean to offend you. I looked toward the front of the diner. The empty diner. Why was there never anyone else in this place? Geoff sighed loudly, and I turned back to watch him start to pack up, sliding his phones and laptop into a large black bag. Look, Sarah, I know you're nervous and probably have lots of questions, but if you're going to do this, then you need to follow my rules, okay? I didn't like the idea of blindly following someone I didn't know, but I was out of choices. And until such time as there was proof I couldn't trust him, well, I had to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was my only option. At least he was willing to help me. Okay. Follow me. We both slid out of the booth, and I followed him outside into the cool breeze and closer to my bike. Again, I'd parked it right out the front. Do you mind if we walk for a bit? I think better when I'm moving. I wanted to laugh at his request. I felt exactly the same way. Sure. Is it okay if I leave my cycle here? Will it remain untouched? I had the feeling he was extremely familiar with this neighborhood and would know the answer to that. He waved his hand without really glancing at my bike, which was strange. Most people couldn't stop looking at the powerful machine. A man who wasn't envious of the muscle I rode every day. Well, that was a first. Of course. It's safe. Now, what you need to understand the most is the absolute importance of time. It needs your respect. As though it were an actual, physical being. We all tend to think of time like the wind, something you can't see but we all know is there. I nodded, feeling the breeze against my face. I often thought of time as intangible. Yeah, I know what you mean. As a time hopper, I had a much better understanding and respect for time than almost any person I knew. But what he was asking for was a step above that. Well, in this case, it'll be different than what you're used to. When you time hop forward, you have all the time in the world to catch your bad guy, cuff him and turn him in. How did he know that? Well, not all the time in the world. The headaches that started if you stayed too long in the future were brutal. He continued as though I hadn't spoken. But when you go backwards, it's different. You're on a timer. And it's not the same as when you're on a normal job. You don't get a location and an ID. You don't just hop through and grab them on site. No. Again, how did he know all of this? He had to have been a time hopper himself at one point, or someone who worked in the department. Maybe one who'd been pensioned off? I made a mental note to look him up in the system when I had a chance. The difference is that when you go back in time, you'll need a piece of the person you want to see. In this case, your sister. If you can get something of hers that was on her when she died, that should bring you back to a few minutes before her murder actually occurred. That shouldn't be too difficult. Surely one of her friends had something, or I could visit the morgue. I suppressed my shudder and focused on Geoff. Okay, I understand. I can probably get my hands on a piece of her clothing or her phone or something relating to that night. What else? He said I'd be on a timer, but how long would I have to convince my sister to change the path she was on? Geoff grunted as though he was impatient for the first time ever. You're going through this too fast, Sarah. Stop jumping to the next step all the time. You will fail if you aren't prepared. I've seen it happen too many times. We need to train you on how to get your sister back, because you'll only have a few minutes to do it. I assumed it wouldn't be long, but a few minutes was going to be tough. Is that it? Seriously? How do we train for something like that? We were still walking down the street, and now other people were milling around us. He was graceful and fit in his movements, and taller than I'd first given him credit for. Role-playing, mostly. I'll be your sister, and you tell me what you'd say to get her to change her plans. I'm assuming you're the older sister? I quirked my head to the side. How'd you know that? He shrugged. Call it a hunch. He turned a corner, stepping into an alleyway. I followed, then stopped walking and looked around. We were relatively alone in this area. He smiled, seemingly happy with the lack of spectators, and tapped me on the arm in a brisk, businesslike way. Okay, I'm your sister and it's minutes before my death. Go. Talk about being put on the spot. Okay. Amanda, you need to come with me right now. You're in grave danger and I need you to trust me, okay? Geoff rolled his eyes and crossed his arms across his chest, just like I'd seen my sister do 1,000 times before. Sarah, go away. I'm having a good time, and you're just here to spoil all my fun like you always do. I gaped at him. His impression of Amanda was perfect, although the deep thrum of his bass voice was a few octaves lower than my sister's voice would be. I'm serious, Amanda. Please trust me. As your sister, and as a law enforcement officer. I want to protect you. I've always protected you, even after Mom and Dad died. Please trust me now. Geoff's face changed, softened somehow. I swallowed hard. That had been more difficult than I'd thought. Especially saying it all to him. Geoff dropped his arms back down, letting the persona of Amanda go. You need to get more personal with her. Those last lines were good, and you need to start with those and then dig deeper. Use everything and anything you know that will tweak her. Those words sliced at me. If we only had one shot at this, and only a few minutes, what if I failed? How do I know what she'll respond to best? I knew my sister well, but we hadn't lived together for years. She loved me and I loved her, but the strong connection wasn't there anymore. Not like when we were kids. Geoff squeezed my arm, and despite the cold weather and the seriousness of the situation, I had tingles in places I shouldn't have. I'll work with you to dig deeper, but you probably need a day or two to think about the best way to do this, Sarah. It's not as easy as it seems. The person you're trying to save is on her own destructive path, and she doesn't expect you to be where she is. She'll be confused and perhaps a little aggressive, but if you know the strings to pull, you can pull this off. Chapter 7. A few more days passed. Days of chasing the coroner for details. They wouldn't release the body yet. Days of chasing the murder investigation squad, who had stopped answering my calls. I received texts and flowers and cards, all sending condolences for a sister who, in my mind, wasn't gone yet. I spent my time cleaning, exercising, and digesting everything Geoff told me about time hopping backwards. The one thing I did do was go to my sister's apartment to help her roommates box up all her things and throw out what I didn't want to keep. It looked to everyone else like I was trying to move on, but in actuality, I was looking for something I could use to go back to that night. There wasn't much luck at her apartment. Everything she'd worn that night was still in evidence. Or so I hoped. And there wasn't much to keep either, as her clothing taste was so very different than mine. So bland and yet so sexy. Mostly black. Blah. But she had some beautiful jewelry and photographs I couldn't part with, for sentimental reasons more than anything else. When my phone rang and I saw it was Geoff, I picked it up, excitement pounding in my chest. "Hey." He chuckled. A strange, sensual laugh I hadn't expected from such a serious guy. "Hey yourself. Meet me at the diner in half an hour. We need to go over some more training." I looked down at the cleaning rag in my hand. "Okay. See you then." I decided to stop asking questions of Geoff, especially in regards to the help I'd enlisted him for. He seemed to know what he was doing, and I was hoping everything would be revealed in the long run. I brushed my hair up into a long purple ponytail, out of the way of my face, as I grabbed my essentials and headed out the door. I'd been thinking a lot about Geoff's training idea, too. About how to convince my sister that she needed to come with me when I needed her to. Amanda was a classic younger sister, and tended to do the opposite of what I said. Even if my way was better for her, and I only had the best of intentions. She fought me all the way. It was probably why she was as different from me as she could be. I had the radical hair, the motorcycle, and the good job. She flitted between college and casual jobs, all the while being blonde and sexily dressed. Sexy but boring comparatively to my style. We were like a non-matching pair of bookends. But that didn't mean I didn't know her, or couldn't tweak her if I needed to. I wove through traffic and made my way to Geoff's cafe. How that place stayed open when he seemed to be the only one who ever ate there, I didn't know. I pulled up in front of the shop and parked my bike as I had 3 days prior. I couldn't help the smile that rose on my face at seeing him sitting in the back, working on his laptop once again. Alone. Except for the barista and the busboy. His glasses were perched on his nose, his brown hair disheveled and too long. Such a nerd. He looked my way as though I'd called out to him and waved at me to come inside. I locked my helmet onto my bike and walked into the practically empty diner. Geoff looked me up and down for the first time in our association. I'd pulled out some of my old bike gear and found my leathers still fit me perfectly, although they did hug my ass a little tightly. Nice of him to notice. "Sarah, I was thinking of working with you on your fighting skills if need be. How's your self-defense?" I blinked at him, shocked at his question. I was an academy graduate and active duty law enforcement. How did he think my self-defense skills were? "They're good, why?" He shuffled his work into that black bag he went nowhere without, and stood up. "Great. Let's go work out in the gym and see if I'm still up to snuff." Something about the way he said that made me think that behind that oversized shirt and strange coat, Geoff may be hiding more of a physique than I realized. It seemed that I'd soon find out. I followed him through the diner, past the restrooms, and through a locked door. My heartbeat tripped over itself and began to race louder as we stepped into a room with no windows. "Where are we, Geoff?" "It's my private training room, don't worry. You're perfectly safe." He flicked on some brighter lights and the room lit up. It looked just like a normal gym, with weight and cardio equipment and far too many mirrors. There was also a large area for boxing and sparring, with thick rubber mats underfoot. It was just the kind of place I dreamed about having at my disposal. "You've been holding out on me." He chuckled in response and pulled his ugly sweater off. Then his shirt, in that sexy way guys had of reaching over their shoulder and then pulling it straight over their heads. He tossed his outer clothes to the side and ran a hand through his tousled hair. Wow. He wore only a white wife-beater style undershirt, which on a lot of guys made them look weak. Not Geoff. He'd been hiding a killer body beneath those bulky clothes. His arms were massive, his chest too broad and super strong. A more than worthy opponent. I licked my lips, my mouth suddenly dry. I'm not sure why we're doing this, Geoff. My combat skills are up to date. I don't want to send you into a time loop without verifying you can protect yourself. Especially since you're hunting a would-be killer. So come on, show me. Geoff shifted his feet to a balanced fighting position and held up his hands. I sighed. Did I really have to do this? You seriously want me to hit you? If you can. His response was delivered without a smile or a smirk. He was serious. I stepped forward and put up my hands. He waited patiently, and I sighed. I really didn't want to do this. Do you have boxing gloves or anything like that? He shook his head, his face as serious as an earthquake. Okay. I kicked out at his thigh above his knee, not wanting to hurt him. He lifted his leg, twisted, and kicked me away. Hard. I almost fell but managed to catch myself, pain searing the inside of my knee. Oh, we were serious, were we? My heart began to thrum, the heat in my blood making a smile pull up my lips. I pulled off my own jacket and threw it to the side. Geoff's gaze slithered down my black corset top. One of my favorites. I stepped forward and swung a punch at his head at half speed just to see what he'd do. He blocked it with a hard forearm and leaned forward, pushing me back with a shove to my chest. I'm disappointed, Sarah. I heaved a sigh and narrowed my eyes. Fine. He wanted a serious sparring match, then so be it. I rushed forward and attacked, punching, kicking, attempting to throw him as I'd been taught. But Geoff blocked every move with ease and my frustration grew. I fought harder, dirty. And yet, at the end of the short session, the only person who ended up on her ass was me. Arg! I whacked my hands against the mats from my place on the floor and rolled to a stand. What the hell, Geoff? My chest was heaving with my strangled breathing and my arms ached from the amount of punches I'd thrown. Why couldn't I take him down? Geoff relaxed his stance and wiped his brow, which I was happy to note was covered in sweat. The Academy did a shit job with you. I give him the bird. What else could I do? What the hell are you talking about? I've taken down and arrested hundreds of criminals. Hundreds. Geoff held up his hands and shook his head. Don't get your shorts in a twist, Sarah. This is the end. I'm going to teach you. My anger instantly calmed, and I became far too aware of how my nipples were tingling beneath my corset. Being thrown by Geoff had involved him pulling me to his body and swinging me over, and damn, I wanted him to do it again. I would love to lie about how much my sex-starved body had enjoyed the contact. But I couldn't. Despite getting my ego sorely bruised, my panties were in a different state from when they came in. He grabbed for his old shirt and pulled it over his beautiful chest, his skin gleaming with perspiration. Disappointment fell over me as I watched his body disappear from view. I grabbed at my own coat, wanting to cover myself up too. Why didn't he seem at all affected by me? I wasn't that ugly, was I? Could he be married? Gay? How would I know, unless I got into his personal life, and it didn't look like that was going to happen anytime soon. Sarah, there's more to this than you know. There are time thieves who will do everything they can to steal your life force when you go back. I stared at him. Are you serious? What are they? Time hoppers gone bad. Time hopping was a learned skill, but in order to be taught, you had to have the genetic predisposition for the skill. There were whispers I'd heard at the Academy of Time Hoppers who had taught themselves. Geoff went on. Pretty much. Listen to me, you cannot let that happen. They have no relationship to your sister, and hopefully you will avoid them entirely, but they can tell a time thief when they see one. You will stand out like the proverbial sore thumb to them. And they will grab you if they can. I heaved a breath. That sounded dangerous and illegal, and all sorts of ugly. I'd never even heard of time thieves before. But then again, up until a few days ago, I'd made sure to stay on the right side of the law. So what can I do to stop that happening? You can fight, but you're going to have to work on your skills. The academy may have prepared you to take down would-be criminals when they least expect it. But you won't stand a chance against these time thieves. They're like bounty hunter, they'll do anything for a fee. I was offended. I'd been a bounty hunter myself, though I'd never been the prey before. So what can I do? I threw up my hands. How was I going to get any better without his help? He reached over his back and pulled his ugly shirt off once again, the ghost of a smile quivering over his lips. I've got time now. If you do. I threw my coat down and unbuckled my shoes. I needed better grip if I was going to take him down. Barefoot was the only way to go. I've got all the time in the world. Then come at me. I charged him and jumped, taking a flying leap at Geoff and kicking out with a roundhouse. My best and most practiced move. He grabbed my leg tight and hauled me to the ground. Pain exploded up my back as I landed on the mats, and his fingers gripped my thigh. I gasped out at the pain. He glared down, kneeling over me. You're too obvious. Slow everything down. Wait for me to move and watch carefully. I nodded and waited for him to let me go, and eventually he did. But not until his fingers had seared my skin and my pussy ached for something it had long stopped craving. Damn it. Of all the people in all the worlds to be attracted to, it had to be this guy. A man living off the grid in a criminal part of town with the geekiest look and the hottest body. What a combination. We stood up and faced each other. Again. Days later I woke up, stiff and sore from my daily training sessions with Geoff. The man was a machine. He didn't stop and would train for hours. Until we were both panting and covered in sweat. He'd grab a bottle of water for each of us, wait a minute, then start again. I rolled out of bed and headed straight for a hot shower, allowing the water jets to massage some of the stiffness from my muscles. If only Geoff would offer some sweet relief for the rest of me, I would be a much happier woman. Once I was dressed in my training gear, stretchy leggings and black tank top, I headed for the door. The doorbell rang just as I went to grab the handle. Who could that be? I looked through the peephole and saw an old friend from work. She wasn't assigned to my division anymore, but we'd been very close, once upon a time. I pulled open the door, an authentic smile on my face. Hey Lexi, how are you? Lexi leaned forward and hugged me, then continued into my apartment uninvited. Good, Sarah. How are you doing? I turned around slowly and shut the door, my detective senses telling me that this wasn't a social call. Oh, you know. She wouldn't know, and she didn't seem to want a more elaborate answer. Lexi smiled and leaned against the arm of the couch. So, what have you been up to with your time off, Sarah? I can imagine preparing for your sister's funeral must be stressful. I opened my mouth to respond with something sarcastic, but shut it again. I didn't really have time for this conversation. Well, considering the fact they still haven't released her body, nor have they told me an actual cause of death, the funeral is impossible to plan. Oh, how terrible, she murmured and nodded like she cared. My temper snapped. Lexi, why are you here? She made noises like she didn't know what I was carrying on about. Oh, I just wanted to see how you were doing. I stared at her and waited, and watched as her face cleared and the serious side of her came out. Now I remembered why we didn't stay friends after she'd left my precinct. She'd always been a political animal. Had risen to the top by stabbing others in the back. She crossed her arms over her abundant chest. Someone told me you've been hanging out with Geoff Wolf. Oh, they'd talking about me at work, had they? No point denying it. I hadn't exactly been hiding it. Yeah, so? I had every right to talk to whomever I liked, and she knew it. Oh, Sarah, don't you even know who he is? You can't trust him. He's as shady as they come. How'd you even meet him? I ignored the question and leaned against my dining room table. Then changed my mind and sat in one of the chairs, keys still in hand. I had things to do, places to be, but if Lexi had more information on Geoff, then perhaps I should listen. What do you mean, shady? Lexi gasped, her eyebrows drawing up into a look of mortification that was so false it was predictable. But I'd play along for the moment. You don't know? I shook my head. Was she going to get to the point soon? And what I really wanted to know was, who sent her? Who'd been watching me? Lexi leaned forward and lowered her voice like she was sharing a state secret. Geoff's been arrested for going back in time and forcing other people to time hop as well, to do his bidding. He doesn't even care if they lose a portion of their life when they do. I struggled to keep my face impassive against this new information. I didn't entirely believe Lexi. She wasn't here to warn me off Geoff for my own good, she'd been sent here to get me away from him. But why? And was her story true? It didn't sound like the guy the first knew. He'd tried to talk me out of time hopping backwards many times, and was now going to extreme measures to make sure that I didn't get hurt in the process. But there was only one way to find out, and that was to ask him myself. I opened my mouth to interrogate Lexi, ask her who'd sent her and why. But that would mean she'd go back to them and report that I was suspicious. I couldn't have that. I forced a smile to my face. I had no idea. Thank you so much, Lexi. I can't believe you came all the way over here to warn me about him. Especially since we haven't talked in 3 years, and I'd heard you'd made your way all the way up to the mayor's office. So you'll stay away from him? She asked, her voice a little too high and hopeful considering the conversation. I shook my head. Oh yeah, that's not a problem. He was just helping me import a new motorbike from a private buyer, but if you think that's too dangerous, I can always cancel the order. I lied smoothly, hoping Lexi took that piece of information back to her informant. I stood up and grabbed my bike jacket. I better head off, Lexi. I was on my way out when you caught me. But thanks again for the info. I really had no idea he'd been in trouble with the law. And I was sincere in that, although I assumed as much. Why else would a man as talented and well-trained as Geoff be hiding in some run-down diner in the middle of gang-owned real estate? Oh, where were you going? Lexi asked, as I ushered her out the door and locked it behind me. The gym. It's the only thing that keeps my mind off things, I explained, the half-truth sitting easily with me. She glanced down at my sneakers and leggings. She must have believed me because she didn't pursue it. We rode the elevator down together, and she gave me a weird little hug as she said goodbye. Oh well. I suppose I'll see you at the funeral, maybe? I wasn't so sure about that. But for now. Yeah, maybe. I can't wait to get back to normality again. Once all that stuff is behind me. I waved Lexi off, put on my helmet and climbed onto my bike, the strength of the motor between my legs roaring to life. Now I had even more questions to ask Geoff. I pulled down my visor and took off, heading towards the diner where the gym was situated. I had a feeling that Geoff lived on top of the shop, or very nearby. But he'd never invited me back there, and with a man like that, nothing was certain. When I arrived, I parked my bike on a side street, out of view of the normal foot traffic. There was only one way that people at work knew I was seeing Geoff. Someone was spying on me, or someone was watching Geoff and recognized me. Either way, it did not bode well for either of us. I walked into the diner, and the man behind the counter gave me a smile and a wave. I smiled back and kept moving until I stepped inside the gym once again. Geoff greeted me with, "You're late." He was stretching on the floor, his legs in old track pants, and his upper body encased in only a ratty sweatshirt. He was still the sexiest man I'd ever seen, even when his eyes were glittering with annoyance. I took off my shoes and my jacket and stayed calm, somehow sensing I was going to have to handle this one carefully. Yeah, sorry. I had an old work colleague drop in as I was on my way out. Geoff bounced to his feet, stretching out his triceps above his head and giving me a good view of the size of his trapezius muscles. Oh yeah. Anything interesting? I nodded. How to approach this one? Well, head-on was usually the best way. She told me to stop hanging out with you, actually. Geoff dropped his arms and swept his hair out of his face with a hand. What? How did she know we'd been working out together? I shrugged. No idea. I haven't told a soul, which means one of us is being monitored. He screwed up his face and thought. Could be either one of us. That indicated that he knew he'd be as much a person of interest as I was, which was more than interesting. Who had he been in his past life? Yep. Anyway, she told me a few things that I wanted to check on with you. Just to keep everything transparent. He nodded and gestured that we should walk over to the wait area. I went with him and sat down on a bench. He leaned against a weight rack. Shoot. I took a breath, nerves rattling me for a moment. I didn't want to be seen as accusing him of anything he didn't do. But if he had committed the crimes Lexi told me he had, then I wanted to know about it. Okay. Lexi said that you'd gone back in time and been charged with it. And that you'd also gotten other people to go back in time for you. To do your bidding, irrespective of the damage to their timelines. My throat tinged with pain as I said the words, which surprised me. Geoff got up suddenly and began to move around the room with irritated movements. I can't believe they managed to get to you, even though we've been so careful. I stood up too. He wasn't denying the accusations. And what did he mean, careful? I hadn't gone out of my way to hide the fact I came here every day. I hadn't realized I needed to. Does that mean Lexi was right? That you used to do that? I tried to keep the tone of accusation out of my voice, but he whirled on me. You shouldn't be so high and mighty, Sarah. You're the one who came to me to do the very same thing. I held up my hands, knowing a guilty conscience when I saw one. Hey, Geoff. There's not ridicule here. I know I came to you because you could show me how to break the law. I just wanted to know what I'm dealing with. He paced for a little while, like a restless giant cat in a cage. Geoff. He stopped and turned to me, pain evident in his gaze. It's true. I did time hop and did get another to jump for me. For my own selfish reasons. It was only once, and the consequences were dire. I regret it every single day. Which explains so much about why he lived so far away from other people, and why he tried so hard to make me see what could happen if I stayed on this path. He was trying to right a wrong, and I respected that. What happened, Geoff? Surely he had a good reason for doing such a thing. I knew I did. He shook his head forcefully. I can't tell you. Of course you can. If anyone would understand, it's me. Geoff grabbed my arm suddenly and hauled me towards the door. No. Please. Just get out. He let go of my arm and opened the door, practically pushing me out into the diner. I began to panic. No. Wait. I didn't mean to upset you, I just wanted to know the truth. Yeah, well, the truth is a horrible thing, Sarah. I definitely think it's best that you leave. But that's not what I wanted. He shoved me out the door and closed it in my face. What the hell? I knocked on the door and tried the door handle. Locked. Geoff. Come on. Open the door. I banged on it a few more times, then fell back into one of the diner chairs. What was that all about? Chapter 8. I charged out of the diner and began to run, scared of what I'd do if I got on my bike. I was royally pissed off now. Fucking furious. The urge to punch walls, crack skulls, and drive dangerously fast over tall bridges came to mind. So I kept running. Angry questions pulsed through my head. Did this mean that everything was ruined? Our plan up in flames? Fuck Lexi. And fuck whoever sent her to make me question the one man who'd been willing to help me. He'd given me information, time, skills. What had anyone else done for me except tell me no? And to move on. Pain rippled through my stomach, and my earlier headache began to pound with the strength of a hammer on stone. Shit. What if I'd screwed everything up so that Geoff wouldn't help me anymore? I needed him now. More than ever, it seemed. I hadn't thought so before, but the more I learned about the hazards of time hopping backwards, the more I realized that I needed someone like Geoff. I didn't really care why he'd asked someone else to hop for him. Once. Big deal. He was sure to have a good reason. I know I certainly did. I'd enlist the police chief himself if he'd help me save my sister. But now I'd gone and screwed it all up by following up on a bitchy piece of advice from an old friend. Regret filled me like icy water. I slowed down as I approached the empty diner once more, my breathing labored, my heart pounding. More questions filled my head. About the situation. About Geoff. But which ones needed answering? And which ones were in line with my goal? I tugged on my own ponytail in frustration, the gentle pain a relief in a way. Someone had tried to derail me from my goal, and with a simple flick of the wrist we were off the tracks, hurtling out of control. I was disappointed in myself more than anything. I reached into my pocket and grabbed the keys for my cycle. I wasn't going home. I only had one choice. I'd taken the leap to question Geoff, and now I needed all the information. To clear his name, or to support him, or to tell him I didn't care what he'd done. But if he was going to defend himself, then I had to go into work and look into Geoff's past myself. Someone didn't want me spending any time with him, and I was pretty sure that was because of what I'd find if I looked into his past. Tragedies that were similar to mine, I was pretty sure. I jumped on my bike and zoomed to my precinct, one goal in mind. To dig deeper into this rabbit hole and find out where it went. Lexi had given me that information on Geoff for a reason, and I had to figure out what that reason was. I parked my cycle in an easy-to-get-to spot in case I had to leave quickly, and sauntered into the precinct like I didn't have a care in the world. Hey, how are you guys? Sam and Max greeted me with smiles. Sarah, what are you doing here? I thought you were still on leave. I smiled and rolled my eyes. Oh yeah, I am going insane, as you can imagine. But Lexi dropped by today to give me some info on an old case. She needed some help. So I thought I'd drop by and see if I could find what she needed. Be useful for a few hours, just to get my mind off things. I dropped my gaze and my voice, trying to look sad and pathetic. Not an easy look for me, but it was worth it to get access to our computers. When I glanced up, I saw the worry in their eyes and knew they'd bought it. Well, you can probably access your computer if you want to use your desk for a bit. I gave them big doe eyes. Oh, thank you so much. It's good for the soul to focus on other people's problems for a while. I walked slowly into the precinct, smiling at those that dared to make eye contact with me. I didn't want to attract attention, but my sheer presence usually did that anyway. I sat down at my desk and turned on my computer. I logged in and began checking emails, the boring things. People popped past my desk, offering their condolences, and I smiled and said all the right things, even though I was bursting inside to see what info they had on Geoff. When the coast was clear, the night shift switching over to the morning, I logged into the police database. Amazingly, I still had clearance. Part of me had thought someone higher up may have revoked those privileges. I looked up Geoff quickly, trying not to look like I was doing anything important. My stomach tightened and my breath caught in my chest. Damn it. Hurry up. These computers could be so slow. Then his file was up before me. I clicked on the mouse and went deeper. What did we have here? He'd been arrested once for time hopping, backwards, as was illegal. He'd admitted to that and had received a slap on the wrist. That was odd, but not entirely unusual if he'd once been a decent citizen. But there was another arrest. Charged with going back in time again. But on that occasion, he'd been accused by an anonymous source. I clicked on the file and there was nothing. Since when did a police report have no information on an anonymous source? Not a recording? Not a signed statement? Nothing. That wasn't right. Nor was it legal. But apparently that had been enough evidence to convict him. Which was strange in and of itself. We never charged someone with a serious crime without more evidence. He'd been convicted, lost his job, of which there was little to no information about, and done a year in a minimum security prison. Holy shit. I clicked out of his file and went back to my emails, my mind awhirl. What was I supposed to think now? Who was telling the truth here? Lexi had said Geoff had asked someone else to time hop for him. Yet this file clearly charged Geoff for hopping twice. Himself. And Geoff had all but confirmed that. So what had really happened? Had the person he'd asked to time hop for him turned him in to save himself? It wouldn't be the first time. But if that was so, why was he charged so easily and with so little evidence? I glanced around and found myself tapping on the files once again. The morgue had been putting me off for nearly 2 weeks now in regards to my sister's body, citing an overflow of work and suspicious circumstances. The details of her death were still not known to me. I went to log out of my computer, but stopped myself. I could look up Amanda's file myself. Find out what they weren't telling me. It was totally unethical, worse than looking into Geoff's file. But I clicked on a few buttons anyway, unable to stop myself. In for a penny, in for a pound. Right? I knew it was a major conflict of interest, and my boss would have my ass. But I was already in too deep, and when the answers were being denied to you, there was only so much one could take. The search came up blank. What? I searched again, using her full name. Then her nickname. Mandy. Then her date of birth. Nothing. What the hell? Where was she? Where was the proof of her death? Her murder? Why wasn't it being investigated by anyone? Where was the goddamn file? Pain exploded behind my eyes as I fought the need to stay calm. I needed air. I needed caffeine. And I needed Geoff. What on earth was happening here? What wasn't I being told? And why was the ICPD covering it all up? What should I do? Keep my mouth shut and try to find another Geoff to help me fix the problem? If there even was another version of Geoff in the world. I didn't have much hope of such a thing. My heart beat a steady, heavy tattoo against my ribs, making my pulse sing and my headaches so much worse. I glanced around the room at the normal uniformed cops. None of them would help me. Anger began to bubble in my gut, and I couldn't push it down. I had to confront them, but somehow not give myself away. I shut down my computer and walked to the bathroom to splash my face with some cold water, then take deep breaths. I had to speak to my boss, or whoever had been assigned to my sister's case. Surely someone had mislaid the file. I couldn't believe that a murder would be ignored in such a way. It went against everything I'd believed about the system. I stared at myself in the mirror and decided I needed to tone down my semi-crazed look. I wet my palms, slicked down my purple flyaways, then twirled my long ponytail into a more conservative bun. I'd never wanted to fit in. Be like everyone else. But when it came to talking to my superiors and appealing to their generous sides, I needed to be less conspicuous. Less threatening. I exhaled my breath slowly, trying to calm the racing of my heart. I wanted to tear at my hair and scream, "Why isn't there a file on my sister's murder?" But instead I took more deep breaths and dried my face again. Okay. I was ready. I walked out of the bathroom and caught sight of my boss walking into his office. I hurried after him and knocked on the door as I entered. "Hey, Chief." "Oh, Sarah, come on in. Someone said you were here." He waved at me and shuffled some paperwork around on his desk. "Yeah, I came in to help with one of Lexi's old cases, but can't seem to get my brain to work." He nodded as he sat, and I slid into the chair opposite his desk. "That was nice of you to offer, but you obviously need more time off, Sarah. This sort of tragedy isn't something that will be easy to recover from." I nodded slowly, putting as much sadness into my face as I could. "I know, but it would be so much easier to move on if I could get some closure on Amanda's death. Do you know who's been assigned to her case?" My boss glanced away, clearing his throat. No one's currently working the case, Sarah. It's been classified as an accidental death, and I know the coroner is hoping to release her body soon." Somehow, I didn't believe him. "I don't know how that's possible, Chief. And even if it was ruled an accidental death, surely there should be a file, or someone I can talk to about the night she died?" I tried to keep my tone light, but my boss narrowed his eyes and I knew I wasn't fooling him anymore. "What have you been doing, Sarah?" "Nothing, just trying to find a way through my grief." I could tell he wasn't buying it, but I clung to my line. "I can't help you, Sarah. I'm sorry." "Well, who can?" I stared at him, and he had the good grace to look away. As he should. Was he a coward? Or a traitor? I didn't know yet. But this was getting fishier by the minute. "Perhaps you'd have more luck with the commissioner, Sarah. She's in the city square office today." I got to my feet, glad someone had pointed me in the right direction. And that was to the top. "Thanks, Chief. Hopefully I'll be back to work in the next few weeks, when everything goes back to normal. I've missed you guys." He gave me a slow, sad smile. One you gave to people you knew you weren't going to see again. "Yeah, we've missed you on the force too, Sarah. You were a great agent." His use of the past tense made my back stiffen and my resolve harden. They hadn't beaten me yet. I grinned at him. "I still am. Thanks for the help, sir." More than one thing didn't add up here. And I wasn't stopping until I'd gotten my answers. I made my way outside, climbed onto my bike, and took off into the center of the city. The city's main precinct was only a few blocks over, and I got there in no time. As I parked and bounced up the stairs, I felt light for the first time in weeks. Excited, almost like someone had lifted the weight of the world off my shoulders. If anyone could clear this up for me, it was our female commissioner. Toughest woman around. Surely she'd be on my side. Wanting justice. I marched straight into the main office and asked to speak to her. The receptionist looked me up and down, as though I were a speck of dirt. "And you are?" "Detective Sarah Marshall. Time-hopping division." "Oh." The woman's face relaxed, as though my strange attire now made sense to her. "I'll see if she's available to see you." I walked around the reception room, looking at the paintings and watching the uniformed cops come and go. That was never who I wanted to be. A patrol officer. I loved the laws that kept us all safe. I admired those who had discovered time hopping so we could have a better world. But the seams of the world around me were beginning to fray. The rights and wrongs had become far too gray. "She'll see you now." I swung around to see the receptionist holding open the door to the commissioner's office. She was seeing me? Now? Wow. I was surprised. I'd come in full of optimism and ready to find my answers. But I'd expected to bump up against a brick wall. Be told to come back in a month. I was relieved that didn't happen. I swallowed hard. On any other day, this would be an amazing moment for me. She was one of my heroes. A woman at the top of her game. But this wasn't a normal day, so I pushed down my excitement and focused on why I was here. I stepped into a grand room with a desk in the center, and a beautiful woman sitting behind it. She wore her perfectly tailored uniform, her hair upswept into a neat bun and her face wrinkled from her many years on the force. "Detective, please sit down and tell me how I can help you today." I couldn't help reaching out and shaking her hand. "I have to tell you what an honor it is to meet with you, Commissioner Monahan." She smiled coolly. "Thank you. Now please." We both sat and I got straight to the point. She didn't look like someone whose time you should waste. "Commissioner Monahan, I'm not sure if you're aware my sister recently died under strange circumstances. It's come to my attention that no one is investigating her death, despite how suspicious it is." The commissioner smiled again, and ice crept along my spine. "Your sister's death was a horrible tragedy, Detective. I am so sorry for your loss." When she stopped and didn't continue, I found myself staring at her for too long. "Was that it?" "Oh, yes. Thank you. But what can be done about reopening the case?" "I'm sorry, Detective, but there simply isn't enough evidence to justify that. From what I understand, it was all very cut and dry." I frowned. What would the commissioner know about my sister's case? I didn't even know any details. Not the where or how. How did she know enough to make a call like that? There must be hundreds of cases a day that came through the city. She was lying about something, I could tell. "Well, I'm sorry to say this, Commissioner, but that is terrible police work. How can there be no evidence at all? Even in an accidental death, there's a boatload of evidence. To say there is none shows how lazy everyone is being." I knew I was out of line talking to this woman as I was, but there wasn't any other way around it. She wasn't telling me the truth, and I had to find a way to weasel it out of her. The commissioner suddenly sighed and started typing on her computer. "I didn't want to tell you this, Sarah. You don't mind that I call you Sarah?" I shook my head. I didn't care what she called me, as long as she told me the truth. "What didn't you want to tell me?" She pushed her monitor around so that I could see the screen from my side. "I'm sorry to tell you that the police department essentially chose to drop the case because your sister was selling herself for timeshares." I gasped. "No. Amanda would never do that. Timeshares were the abomination child of time hopping. And no self-respecting person would buy themselves more time unless they were doing something pretty bad with it. We have evidence. The night she was killed, it was a sexual encounter gone wrong with a seller. No one wanted you to be embarrassed by your sister, so everyone lied to protect you." "I'm sorry." My brain was completely blank. I didn't know what to think. But my gut told me this woman was covering something up. So I said the first thing that came into my head. "No. That has to be a lie. I don't believe you." The commissioner smiled and pressed a button on the computer screen, revealing security camera footage of my sister at the party. My heart cracked to see her alive and well. Sexy, beautiful, so vibrant. Then she was leaving with a guy, going down on him on a rooftop. I looked away. No, it couldn't be. She wouldn't do that. Not for timeshares. Why would she? She was 23 years old. The commissioner turned the computer back to herself. "I'm so sorry, Detective. I know we all want to think the best of our friends and family, especially our family, but it's not always the truth." My heart dropped lower and lower, my stomach lurching with sickness. This can't be so, and yet it had to be. No. That video proved nothing other than the fact that my sister was having a fun, though rather loosely moral night. There was no timeshares exchanged, no proof that she'd spoken of. Though that was their conclusion. So what should I believe? I didn't know, but I had to get out of here. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Thank you, Commissioner Monahan." Thank you." I stumbled out of her office and managed to get out of the precinct and down the 20 or so stairs to ground level. I can't say I didn't almost fall, I did. I could barely see for the tears that threatened to fall. But I made it, and the crisp air around me helped me to breathe. If all of this was a lie, then it meant everything I'd learned with Geoff was for nothing. So, what was I going to do now? Chapter 9. Somehow I made my way home, but I couldn't stop crying. I sat on the floor in my tiny living room and sifted through Amanda's things, the memories of our childhood playing in my mind. So many fights we'd had. So much laughter shared. She was a good person, I knew she was. The same way I knew I was a decent human being. It was in our hearts. That wasn't something one could change. And I couldn't believe my sister had been killed making some shady prostitute exchange on a roof in the city. I just couldn't. I wouldn't. I found myself putting on her clothes. Things that were so not me. So feminine and pink. Items I shouldn't have kept, but couldn't bring myself to throw away. But I didn't care how bad they looked. I needed to feel close to her. Then I found a black dress that felt like silk beneath my fingers and smelled like my sister. I put it on and it hugged my curves like it had been made for me. I couldn't find the will to take it off. There was only one thing to do at a time like this. And that was to drink. I stumbled down the stairs and walked along the street. I'd never noticed a single drinking hole within 2 blocks of my apartment, but that was probably because I didn't really drink. Not anymore. But tonight, when I needed it the most, I was certain a bar would just jump up out of nowhere. My sister always said you couldn't go half a block in this city without hitting a drunk. Music blared up ahead, and I squinted to see flashing lights and gathered people that would surely lead me to a drinking establishment. I kept walking and soon found myself sitting on a stool at the bar, ordering a cocktail. Vodka and cranberry, please. The spirits burned in the nicest way. And it dulled some of the pain. So I ordered another. Hello, sweetheart. Can I buy you your next one? A guy slid up beside me on the vacant stool, and I gave him the best stony expression I had. He had slicked back hair and wore a suit. A suit. Like a woman like me would ever go for someone corporate. I'd rather a trash collector. At least they were honest. Do I look like I can't buy myself my own drinks? He stood back up, his smile now barely visible on his freshly shaved face. No, but... Fuck off. I turned back to my drink and he faded away. And happily, the bartender continued to serve me what I needed. He'd obviously seen a broken heart before. I'd given him my credit card. A card I didn't use for anything other than emergencies, and told him to keep them coming. The more I drank, the hazier everything around me became. I found a booth for myself and let my body relax against the cushions. I wasn't sure which way was up and which way was down now. My head was spinning. The lights in the room made my eyes hurt, so I shut them. But the vodka was nice. I couldn't get my sister out of my head. All the good. And the not so good. Sure, Amanda had bounced from bad job to bad job. Stupid guy to stupid guy. But she was fun and silly and fiercely loyal. You couldn't hurt one of her friends without getting the full wrath that was my baby sister. I suppose that's why it hurt so much when that loyalty wasn't returned. Her friends had abandoned her so quickly. But could I blame them if she'd been doing something so morally reprehensible? Did it mean I didn't know the real person that was my sister? I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore. My phone beeped and I looked down at my cell, focusing on the small screen. It was a robo-text. Those annoying communications from companies trying to scam unsuspecting people. Where was the line on privacy anymore? I opened the phone and went swiping, deleting anything that looked suspicious. Anything I hated or annoyed me. Then my list of contacts rolled up and I put my finger on Geoff's name. Stupid guy. I couldn't believe he'd bailed on me today. Could it only be today? This morning that it had happened? I pressed his name too hard and the phone began to ring. I put the speaker up to my ear. Would he answer, was the question. Hello? Oh, now he wanted to talk, huh? Strange pleasure pulsed through me to hear his accented voice. Geoff, how are you? There was a pause, and I strained to hear him over the music. Sarah, do you know what time it is? I shrugged, then realized he couldn't see me. Ah, nope. What time is it? He sighed. Heavily. And loudly. Where are you? What did he care? I don't know. But you know what, Geoff? What? I giggled, my inhibitions on the floor. Along with my heart and my pride. I may as well tell him exactly what I thought. You're like so cute. Such a hottie. Like, really hot. How did a man like you get so hot? Sarah. No. Stop. You don't understand. Men like you know, brainy and stuff. Should not be so muscly. You're like this big man mountain that I just want to climb. I grabbed the drink being handed to me by the nice bartender and giggled again. My sister was right, Geoff. This feels so nice. Why don't I drink like this more often? I mean, all your shit just floats away. What happened, Sarah? I put my lips to the cocktail glass and swallowed the contents down, the tang of the lime making me wince. What do you mean, what happened? You mean other than the day from hell? He had to know that I'd go investigating what they'd told me? They'd raised questions he'd refused to answer. Come on, Geoff. He was smarter than that. What happened, Sarah? He asked again, his stupid perfect control and patience back in place. And that made me incredibly angry. Gah. Do you really want to know, Geoff? What happened to me? Today? Because you said you didn't care. I didn't say that. Well, if he wanted to be picky. No. You just kicked me out of your place. That was so very rude, by the way. I staggered to my feet and stumbled to the bar. I could barely walk. I'd probably had enough for now. And if I wanted to get my point across, I needed to at least be able to speak. Hey. Can you put my tab through? I think I'm done for the night. I asked the bartender, who nodded and tapped on the credit machine in front of him. Thanks. I gripped the bar, my head spinning with the alcohol fog now. Sarah. Geoff was persistent in my ear now, but I couldn't concentrate. I've got to sit down, the room's spinning. I staggered over to a corner near the front door with an empty couch. When my butt landed on a cushion, I sighed and hiccuped. The room's still spinning, how? Sarah, concentrate. Geoff's voice boomed in my ear. I pulled it away from my head and winced. Okay. You don't need to yell. I tried to listen again, but I couldn't hear very well. Sarah. I'm coming to get you. Where are you? I don't know. Hey, where am I? I grabbed for a guy who was walking past, who reminded me of Geoff, a bit. He was way too serious. He took the phone from me and gave Geoff the name and an address, I think. I couldn't hear very well at the moment. He handed me back the phone and smiled at me. I gave him the thumbs up and a smile back. Geoff said, Sarah. Stay there. I'm coming to get you, okay? Don't move. Why? Did it matter? Why not? Okay. I hung up on him and clung to the edge of the leather couch. The whole room was spinning and I closed my eyes. My baby sister. My stupid, beautiful baby sister. How did you stoop so low? I could have helped you if you needed the money. I would have given it to you if I knew what you were going to do if you didn't have it. I promise I would have. Then suddenly someone touched me. My hands, my face. And I wasn't scared. I opened my eyes and Geoff was hovering over me. Oh, Geoff. The sob was out before I could stop myself. He lifted my arm up over his neck and swung me up into his arms. I didn't fight him. I clung to him. My savior in the storm. Thanks, he said to someone as he walked me outside to his car. My head was swinging from side to side, and my hair was in my mouth. I couldn't keep my eyes open, and I knew I was a wreck. Shame and embarrassment were close companions, though the alcohol kept them nicely at bay. But Geoff didn't harass me or lecture. He looked after me, buckled me into the car, and then slowly drove me somewhere. Home, perhaps. Where are we going? I managed to ask, checking my body for my keys and my credit card. Yep, still had both. We'll go back to my place. I didn't know where that was, and I didn't care. Okay. Then the pain started again. Just hearing his voice. It brought it all back. Too quickly for me to cope with. I sobbed as I struggled to breathe through my nose. They said she died whoring herself for timeshares. I sobbed again and put a hand to my mouth to stifle the noise. There was silence in the car, and I turned with blurry eyes to my driver. Can you believe that, Geoff? Here I was, willing to lose my job, risk jail, to save her, when all she was doing was. I couldn't even say it. Not again. Geoff's hand slid over to my leg, squeezing it tightly in a show of sympathy. I grabbed his hand and held on the whole drive home. Like an anchor in a storm, I needed something stable to hold onto. He parked underground in an unfamiliar garage and came around to my door and pulled me out of the car. He didn't pick me up again, but instead let me kind of stagger to the door he indicated and got me inside. Come on, Sarah. This way. His voice as kind as he put a hand around my waist and drew me into a bedroom of sorts. I didn't care where I was, as long as I could lie down. I staggered to the bed and fell onto it. I still felt like I was on a ship, the whole world rocking around me, but the mattress beneath me was solid. And the air around me clean. My ears rang from the loud noise of the bar, but I still heard Geoff laugh at me, I think, as he pulled my shoes off. I rolled onto my back and the ceiling danced in front of my eyes. I swallowed the acid bile that rose in my throat and closed my eyes again. It was so not worth being awake at this point. I'll leave you. Panic filled me up. My anchor couldn't leave me. I'd drown. I knew I would. No. No. Geoff, please. I reached out to him and he came to me. Sat down on the bed next to me. I had to beg, and that was fine. Please don't go. Stay with me. I lifted my head up and met Geoff's gaze. We shared a look I've never shared with anyone. One where I felt like, for the first time, a person could see inside my soul, to the very truest part of me. A part one kept hidden, that wasn't easy to see. And he wasn't looking away in fear. Instead, he lifted his hand and touched my cheek. I turned my face to kiss his palm, and he ran his thumb over my lips. The feeling made me shiver, pleasure pulsing through my blood. I stared at him, wondering if he'd kiss me if I asked. So beautiful, he murmured. And then the most horrible feeling starts to churn in my gut. Oh no. I turned onto my side and vomited on Geoff's shoes, the pain and alcohol of the night spraying out of me in a disgusting fashion. Mostly pink, but there were chunky bits too. Oh, gross. Geoff moved away and I pulled back my hair. Why hadn't I tied it up? Rookie move. Geoff, bless him, came back with a towel, and the world went black for the longest time. Chapter 10. The morning light shone into my eyes with far too much enthusiasm. Oh, fuck me. I lifted my arms to shield my sensitive eyes and blinked a few times, trying to get my bearings. This wasn't my bedroom. And this wasn't my bed. I struggled to sit up on the pillows that were beneath my head, but did not belong on my bed. Then Geoff walked forward with a mug of what smelled like very strong coffee, and an open hand with a couple of aspirins on it. Here you go. Take these. I took the tablets and washed them down with the water already by my bed. Scratch that. Geoff's bed. I think. Thank you. The coffee was next, and I took it lovingly into my hands. I don't usually drink black coffee, but I would today. I took a sip, the burn of heavy caffeine moving down my throat. What happened yesterday, Sarah? I struggled to sit up further, then leaned against the headboard. Something totally horrible. I went to the police station to check out your police file, just to figure out why the hell they wanted to keep me away from you. And while I was there, I looked up my sister's file. Yours didn't make sense at all, and my sister's was missing. Missing? What do you mean? I took another sip of the black coffee. The hammers in my head continued to bang against my temples. I rubbed my scalp with my free hand. Ouch. I mean missing. Gone. Kaput. Not even a single sentence about her or her death. Which was still not the oddest thing that had happened yesterday. Even with the shocking truth that I'd been told, the lack of any case file was just shady. Okay, what happened next? I'd expected him to ask what I'd found on him, but he didn't seem too concerned about that. Which was good, I supposed. I sighed and forced my head to think clearly. Not an easy task. My body felt like I'd fallen down a flight of stairs last night, and my brain was like Swiss cheese. Okay. Let's see. I went to my boss, who said my sister's death was ruled an accident because there was no evidence. So I pushed for more information and was directed to go speak to the commissioner. She was a real piece of work, I can tell you. I shook my head and regretted it instantly. Ow. More coffee needed. What did she say? I swallowed more black tar, though the sweetness was coming through now. He must have loaded it with sugar, too. He really did know the tricks of surviving as a time hopper. Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry. She showed me camera surveillance of my sister blowing some guy, and she told me it was my sister's way of paying for timeshares. But I just can't believe it. I don't know why. I mean, my sister wasn't perfect, far from it. But this. It's a lie, Geoff said as strongly and with as much conviction as I'd ever heard him say anything. I lifted my gaze up to his, and I could see the anger in the tenseness of his muscles, the set of his jaw. Oh, how I wish that to be true. How do you know? He walked over to the blinds and drew them down, the sunlight in the room reducing to a much more acceptable level. Oh, thank you. I sunk further into the pillows, wanting to go back to sleep. Because if that woman, Commissioner Monahan, told you, it has to be a lie. I stared up at him, wanting more information, but my brain hurt. He sighed. Heavily. Like he had to the weight of the world on his shoulders. You okay? I asked him. He crossed his arms over his chest and nodded. I need to tell you why I time-hopped backwards before. I sent my brother back for me, because to be honest, I wasn't sure if I could handle the scene I knew I'd be confronted with. I'd found out that someone had raped my girlfriend. He paused as I gasped, then forced myself to listen harder. This was very different than I'd expected. He ran a hand through his hair and left the room suddenly, coming back in a moment, dragging a chair from what I could only assume was the kitchen. He sat down on it in front of me, his massive shoulders sagging in a posture I'd never seen on him. Geoff looked downtrodden, broken. And I didn't like it. The man deserved better. I didn't want to hop back myself. Cowardly, I know. But I was afraid of what I'd see, or that I'd kill the guy if I saw who it was. My brother had a lot better control than me, and he wasn't emotionally invested either. That sounded intelligent, and in my opinion, a totally justifiable reason to time hop. What happened? I could only imagine what that decision would have been like for Geoff. Wanting to save her, but being afraid of what he'd see. I felt the same way about my sister. I wanted to save her. She didn't deserve to die, no matter what she'd been doing at the time of her death. But if I time-hopped backwards and found her fucking some random guy, what would I do? Michelle, well, she's a police sergeant herself, so I know I should never have done it. Interfered with the timeline and what happened to her, but how could I not? Hang on a minute. Michelle Barker? I know her. She was an absolute bitch. I couldn't believe someone like Geoff would be with a person like Michelle. Sure, he was a cranky pain in my ass, but now that I knew more of his baggage, I was beginning to see why. Yeah, I'm sure you do. He still wasn't looking at me, his gaze somewhere closer to the ground. But anyway, he sighed and rested back against the chair, finally lifting his gaze to mine. When Tommy Time hopped back to save her, he found out what really happened, and there was no one to save. She wasn't actually raped, that's just what she'd told me when I'd smelled the man on her. She was having an affair. Anger ripped through me like a gut punch right to the solar plexus. I hated women who'd done that more than anything. They made a mockery of sexual assault and shamed every victim who came forward. Rape ruined a woman's life more often than not, and women like Michelle made real victims' lives so much harder. That fucking bitch. He choked out a strange laugh. Yeah, well, I agree. But it gets worse. The man Michelle was cheating with was the commissioner's husband. No. Oh my God. Yes. Which meant that Michelle turned me in to save herself. And thanks to the commissioner wanting to cover her own ass and save her marriage, that's what went on record, not my testimony. My mind was blown. Like totally shattered. I drank more coffee, then put the mug down, determined to give Geoff 100% of my focus. So that means what? My head was clearing thanks to the caffeine and aspirin, but I still couldn't quite put it all together. It means that the commissioner destroyed my life to protect her marriage. She's evil. And corrupt. So you can safely assume that whatever she told you about your sister is a lie. You can't trust that woman as far as you can throw her. My silly brain imagined up a scenario where Geoff picked up the diminutive commissioner and tossed her halfway across Central Park. I shook my head. That wasn't helpful. So what do we do then? I swung my legs over the side of the bed and prepared myself to stand up. My stomach flipped and I swallowed quickly. Please don't vomit. I still wore my sister's black dress and I needed a long shower. I looked at Geoff patiently and waited for his answer. He had a bigger score to settle than me, if that were possible. It means that we're going to hop back in time and find out what really went on. Because I guarantee you, the commissioner is involved somehow. I froze. Was he serious? After everything Geoff had gone through, everything they'd put him through, he was still willing to help me? And even more so, he wanted to go with me? You'll come with me? Really? He nodded and grabbed both of my hands, pulling me to my feet. My hands tingled where he touched me, and the familiarity between us had grown substantially. He nodded. Absolutely. I can't wait to see what the bitch has been up to. I looked up at him, meeting his gaze for a long moment. I so wished he would kiss me. He was just there. And for the first time in so long, I knew I'd found an amazing guy. But instead of going with the moment, he looked away and it was gone. I just need a quick shower and my clothes. Not a problem. You want to go back to your place now? That was probably the best solution. Yeah. Let's do that. I gathered up my shoes and sat to pull them on. I wasn't sure where I was or where my cycle was. Oh, right. I walked to the bar last night. Can you drive? He smiled, one of the first I've ever seen on him. Yeah, of course. I'll grab my stuff and see you at the front door in a sec. He went off to find whatever it was he needed, and I stood up. The room still spun a little, and my stomach churned with its need for food, but my mind was clear. Geoff was so right. We needed to time hop backwards and find out what on earth was going on with my sister and the police commissioner. And with that, probably unearth a whole lot of shit that we should never have found. I walked to the front door and Geoff was standing there in leathers similar to mine, old and worn. And he looked hot, fit and strong. But I pushed those feelings away for another day. I gave him a once-over, up-and-down glance. Then a smile. Never picked you for a cycle guy. He grinned, actually grinned. Nah, it's just what I wear to time hop. Cuts down on the windpane. Oh, a man after my own heart. Yes, I totally agree. For me, the bike had come first, but I'd soon worked out that the leathers were great for time hopping, as long as they had stretch for comfort and were insulated for warmth. Let's go. We walked outside and down the 2 flights of stairs to the ground floor. I wasn't surprised to find that I'd been right. You do live on top of the restaurant. He didn't say anything, just smiled and opened the car in front of us. An old blue sedan with nothing conspicuous or interesting about it. I jumped in and the motor revved to life. A powerful V8 that did not belong in a car that any grandpa would be proud to own. Whoa, wasn't expecting that. I put my seatbelt on and Geoff pulled into traffic with the speed and skill of an expert. You can't always judge a book by its cover. I laughed, my time-hopping comrade relieving the tension of the situation perfectly. So true. Geoff was such a mixed bag of mystery and interest, and as his car indicated, had a lot more strength beneath the hood than his clothes or his demeanor indicated. We were home in 20 minutes, and we both ran upstairs to my apartment, the adrenaline of the impending hop already hitting us both. I opened the door and waved at the piles of my sister's junk. Excuse the mess, I'm still sorting through my Amanda's stuff. Give me 5 minutes and I'll be ready to go. I raced into the bathroom and jumped into the hot shower. God, I needed that. I could smell the alcohol seeping out of my pores. It was gross, like an old alcoholic. I scrubbed my skin, my face, and my sweaty hair. But I didn't want to waste time, so I hurried through my hair washing and whipped the purple mess into a quick braid before rushing to my bedroom. I pulled on my most comfortable leather pants and a gray long-sleeve top. Geoff was right about the wind's chill factor with hopping, and I had to assume that it would be worse going back. When I stepped out into the living room, Geoff had moved the furniture to the edges of the room so that we had space around us. We're going to jump from here? Yes. Do you have something of your sister's from that time to hold on to? I wasn't sure. Everything from that actual night had been thrown away. I don't know. I'm sorry. I know you told me to try and get something, but the police have been blocking me, and the coroner hasn't released anything to me yet. He nodded. This is just reeking of a cover-up. I grabbed a box from the table. I have some of her jewelry. I'm not sure if it was worn that night, probably not. But I know which pieces were her favorites. He inhaled sharply, his nostrils flaring. It may still work. You've seen some of the footage from that night, you can visualize it. Wear some of her jewelry, and focus really hard on the scene in your head that the commissioner showed you. You may be able to hop us straight there. That sounded dangerous and not scientific at all. But what the hell, right? What did we have to lose at this point? Okay. I opened her jewelry box and pulled out 2 of her fancy necklaces. One she'd gotten from Nicole, and one I'd bought for her for Christmas. I draped them around my neck and patted them. A pretty ring was beneath the necklaces, one I'd given her for her 21st birthday. I slid it onto my finger, trying to ignore the jab of pain shooting through my chest. My sister was dead. No. I was going back to save her. Geoff put out his hand and I took it without question. This is way more rushed than I originally wanted for you. So I apologize for the crash course. I squeezed his hands. Lead the way. I'm ready. We're only going to have 5 minutes total, Sarah. 5. It's not much. So you need to make it count. He bowed his head and I closed my eyes. He whispered, concentrate on everything about her. Her face, her voice, the clothes she wore that night. Then take us there. I did as he said, and saw my sister in that part of my mind I reserved only for time hopping. I saw her name in my mind first, then I visualized her face. The top of the rooftop where the video had been taken. My eyes sprung open and I pulled my hands free to clap twice, then I pushed with all my force into that place. Wind whirled around us as a time hop portal opened. But it wasn't like one I'd ever seen. It swirled the wrong way and tugged and pulled at us. I grabbed Geoff's hand once more. I yelled over all the noise in the room. Let's go. We ran forward, together, and were zipped through the fabric of time at an alarming rate. I couldn't breathe. It hurt. Geoff's fingers tightened around mine, and I held him fast. Despite the fear of how different this all was, I stayed focused, lest I lose him in this place. Strands of my hair flicked in my eyes, and my feet tingled with cold. And then it was all gone, and my knees sagged as we hit the concrete. My eyes popped open, my stomach roiling with sickness. I should have eaten something before I left. Chapter 11. Where were we? I looked around. The cement floor beneath our feet was the rooftop, hopefully where I'd find my sister. The bar they said she'd never moved on from. I looked out in the distance. The city skyline flashed before my eyes. Geoff held a finger to his lips, signaling me to be quiet. There was a man's voice speaking, and then I heard a woman's. Behind us. We snuck towards the sounds. The voices were so familiar. Go, a woman said, her tone unimpressed. I watched a man zip up his pants and leave the rooftop, shaking his head as he opened the door and disappeared. Geoff indicated I should follow him, and we snuck into an area that allowed some visibility for us, but not for those we were watching. I swallowed my gasp as my heart jumped into my throat. It was the police commissioner, standing with my sister, who was still getting her clothes in order from whatever she'd been doing with the guy. I swallowed again. I didn't want to know what Amanda had been doing with him. I wanted to know what the commissioner was doing here. Did you find out anything useful? She asked Amanda. Amanda tugged her dress into place and whirled on the woman. Yes, I did, actually. And why the hell have you got me trading sex for these secrets? I deserve a better assignment than this, Margot. My heart pounded faster in my chest. What was this? My sister was undercover? Working for the cops? Why didn't she tell me? You're perfect in this role, Amanda. Young, sexy, tough. Tell me what he told you. Amanda played with her hair, twirling it around her finger as she often did when she was nervous. That some pretty influential people are time-sharing. Amanda laughed. Well, I wouldn't call it sharing, really. Buying people's time so that their life could be extended, while others lose years. It's a horrendous crime. Relief flooded me. I knew my sister would never commit the crime she was accused of. The commissioner had lied to me. But why? Who are the people he informed on? The commissioner pressed, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I looked around. Was the killer coming this way? Why did I feel like danger was around the corner? The governor, 2 judges. And you, Margot. What? The commissioner screeched. Why, Margot? Why? You're still young and so powerful. What do you need more time for? The commissioner whipped out a gun from nowhere, and my heart began to race. She was the killer. That fucking bitch. She shook her head and sighed. Why'd you have to go and do that, Amanda? Amanda laughed, and I wanted to sob, but bit my tongue instead. That's the sister I remember. Strong. Too strong. Me? You're the one committing a major crime. The commissioner smiled. It's nothing, and if you were me, you'd do the same thing. Amanda crossed her arms across her chest. Not likely, but please fill me in. The woman still had her gun trained on Amanda, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get it from her. How was I going to stop the inevitable from happening when we only had a few minutes left? My husband's been having an affair with women at work. I want revenge. Pure and simple, and I've found a way to do it. Geoff grabbed my shoulder, and when I looked at him, he tapped his watch. Shit. We were running out of time. I maneuvered around the large ventilation stacks and got into place. My sister delivered a slur at her boss, and I flinched. You really shouldn't have said that, Amanda. The gun went off with an ear-popping crack. I lunged forward. Too late. Geoff grabbed me around the middle and pulled me back, out of the way. My sister slumped to the concrete in a pool of her own blood, and I couldn't stop the sob that rose in my throat. The sound echoed around us. "Who's there?" the commissioner called out, and my tear-stained gaze swung around to Geoff. He whispered at me, "We have to get out of here." We had just witnessed a murder, conducted by one of the most powerful women in the country. My head was spinning with all the complications of such a thing. Geoff pulled me to my feet, grabbed my hands, and zipped us home. We were spiraling through that wind tunnel and back in my living room before I knew it. I collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down my face. My sister's dead. She's really dead. And I was there. And I didn't stop it. She killed Amanda. My phone rang and we both stared at it. Geoff moved towards it and picked it up, the number obviously one he recognized. "It's her." He handed the cell to me, and I trembled with barely leashed anger. "You mean the commissioner? My sister's murderer? What do I say to the bitch?" I stared at the phone, then back at my fellow timehopper. Geoff ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know, but I'm pretty sure she heard us." I groaned. Of course she had. A dead man would have heard my gasp of horror. Geoff indicated to the cell. "Pick it up and see what she wants, but don't admit to anything." I nodded in agreement, but I couldn't breathe properly. I exhaled slowly, settling the racing of my anxiety, then picked up the phone. "Detective Sarah Marshall here." "Sarah, it's Commissioner Monahan." I caught Geoff's eye. "Commissioner Monahan. How can I help you?" Geoff walked off, throwing his arms around as though he was as frustrated as I. I thought I'd pass on the good news myself. "Some new evidence has come to light in regards to your sister's death. I was wondering if you'd like to come in today to see it for yourself?" I inhaled deeply through my nose. "Oh, that's wonderful." I rolled my eyes and forced the smile to my lips, a tip I knew to increase happiness in your voice. "Thank you. Yes. I'd love to. Where can I meet you, Commissioner?" "Oh, my office is fine." She sounded so relaxed, so in control of her life. "Great. I'll be there in half an hour." "Thank you." I hung up before my voice trembled any further. I dropped the phone like it burned my hand, the plastic case bouncing on the carpet at my feet. Gah. She wants me to come in and talk to her about my sister's death. I began to pace the room, shaking out my arms as I went. I felt dirty just by talking to her. Geoff grimaced. "Of course she does. We need a plan." I stopped pacing and stared at the man before me. I couldn't agree more. We came up with a quick plan and popped past Geoff's house for equipment. Then I got on my bike and headed into the den of the lion. The police commissioner headquarters. I wore a police wire under my leather jacket, and Geoff was in his car nearby, listening to the sound of my racing heartbeat. "How's the sound clarity?" I asked under my breath. "Perfect," Geoff's voice whispered in my ear. I couldn't help the smile that tugged up my lips. Geoff had been more prepared for this sort of thing than I'd ever imagined. Not many weapons, but he had some great intel-gathering equipment hidden in one of his closets. Let's see what she has to say about my sister now. I walked up to the same receptionist from yesterday, nervous adrenaline racing through my bloodstream. "Detective Sarah Marshall to see the commissioner. She's expecting me." The woman gave me a smile that could only be described as warm. Considerably different than the one I'd gotten from her yesterday. "Of course, detective. This way." I was ushered into the office, and Margot came forward with a big smile. "Thank you for coming in so quickly, Sarah. I appreciate your time in this bereavement period." She held out her hand and I flinched, not wanting to touch the skin of my sister's killer. But she kept her hand out in the air and waited patiently. I didn't want to give our game away, so I chose to shake her palm, comforted in the fact that she'd soon be behind bars. I appreciate you calling me, Commissioner. I'm sure someone lower down the ranks could have passed on the new information. As if she'd let anyone else touch this one. Oh no, not at all. Please sit. We sat down in the same seats we were in yesterday. But today was very different. Today it wasn't me coming, begging for help. And she knew it. I assume you know why you're here, Sarah. Her smile was gone, her deadly daggers were out. I let my eyebrows rise, pretending like her tone didn't make any sense. You told me you had new evidence about my sister's death, Commissioner. We needed it all, for the recording more than anything else. Don't play dumb with me, detective. I know you time-hopped back to that night, which is illegal and punishable with jail time. I kept my face impassive, kind of enjoying how upset she seemed to be getting. I waited and weighed my words carefully. Commissioner Monahan, the only thing that is important to me is solving the mystery around my sister's death. If you have new evidence, please share. The commissioner sat forward in her chair, glaring at me with an icy gaze. I know you time-hopped with Geoff Mason, Sarah. He went to jail for his second offense, this time he'll be in for life. I'll make sure of it. My blood began to boil. She could threaten me, but going after Geoff was a low blow. He hadn't done anything wrong. Either time. And he'd already suffered enough. I stood up and leaned on the desk in front of me, hovering above the commissioner, using intimidation techniques that I'd learned in my past job. I wanted to push her into exposing as much as possible. Listen, Margot, lay off Geoff, okay? Don't you think it's bad enough that his girlfriend was cheating on him with your lying husband? Hasn't he been punished enough for you being a terrible wife? The commissioner's face went white and pinched. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth. I stood up once again and began to inch towards the door. If you've got no more evidence in regards to Amanda's murder, or rather her accidental death, I'll be on my way. The commissioner raced around the desk, her handgun pointed directly at me. The same one she'd killed Amanda with. You're not going anywhere, Sarah. You're too much like your sister, you know. She didn't know when to leave well enough alone. I put up both my hands and spoke clearly into my microphone. Geoff, you better call the cavalry. I'm not dying today. Don't shoot. Please. I'm unarmed. She smirked. Of course you are. You're not a cop anymore. I glared at her. I still had my piece. No one had taken it off me yet. So, what are you going to do then, Margot? Shoot me in cold blood in the middle of the day? She wouldn't. The commissioner laughed, the sound too high and frantic to belong to a rational person. I could, you know. And I'd get away with it. No one would blink. After all, I'm the police commissioner, and you're some purple-haired freak who time hops because you can't do anything else. Oh, she was getting personal, was she? Well, fine. Oh, pot calling the kettle black, I see. I'm the freak? At least I'm not a murderer. Tell me, did you enjoy shooting my baby sister? The only family I have in the whole world. She put up a real fight, didn't she? Totally unarmed and untrained. Margot advanced on me, hissing as she went. She was going to expose me, and I couldn't have that. And thank you for confessing, Sarah. The only way you could know any of those details was because you time-hopped that night. I knew that noise behind me was you. She aimed the weapon and my heart thundered faster in my chest. She really was going to do this. Anything to save her stupid marriage and reputation, it seemed. A true narcissist. I pulled open my jacket and revealed the wire attached to my bra. Geoff has been recording everything you've been saying, and he's going straight to the deputy commissioner with it. Don't make this harder on yourself than it's already going to be. Her eyes went wide and bright, her lips twisting into a grimace of pure hatred. She gripped the handle harder, and I knew she was going to shoot me. She had nothing to lose now. I charged her and used some of the new techniques Geoff taught me. I blocked her arm, knocking the gun out of her hand. It went off, the bullet firing off into a wall behind me. I kicked her knee to throw her sideways, and then flipped her onto her back. She cried out as she fell, and I dove for her gun, grabbing it up and holding it on her. "You're done for, Margot, and they're going to make you pay for what you did to my sister." The commissioner snarled at me from the ground. "I'll be seeing you in jail, Sarah. They'll lock you up when you admit to time hopping illegally." I glared at her with all the venom in my soul. "If it means putting you away for life, it'll be well worth it." The doors to the office swung open as people rushed in. Uniformed officers all in blue, guns blazing, yelling at me to drop the gun. I held it up and froze. The commissioner's receptionist followed them, and of course, Geoff. He came straight over to me and took the gun from my hand, sliding the safety on. "Are you okay?" The commissioner was hauled to her feet by the cops and cuffed with her arms behind her back. I exhaled sharply, relief tingling along my nerves where the adrenaline had been. "Yeah, I think so." A woman came over with an evidence bag and opened it for Geoff. "I'll take that, and I'll need a statement from you, Detective Marshall." "Not a problem. Of course. I'll tell you everything and anything." I waved at her and stumbled backwards until I sat in the seat opposite the door. Geoff stepped in front of the female detective, speaking to her. "Give me a minute, okay?" He squatted down in front of me and I looked at him, not quite sure what he needed. But my eyes were a little crossed and focusing was hard. If I wasn't mistaken, I was starting an adrenaline crash. I felt lightheaded and strangely relieved. And sad. Empty even. Not what I expected to feel. I focused on Geoff. "We didn't save my sister," I whispered to him, though the room was a cacophony of sound, and I doubted anyone would be able to hear me. "No, not yet. But you did bring down a major villain, and I have to tell you, I'm so grateful to you, Sarah. That was an amazing job." Pleasure filled me as he slid his hands over my knees, up and down, as though reassuring me in some way. The feeling is hypnotic, and I don't want him to stop. Then his words come back to me. "What do you mean, not yet?" He couldn't possibly think we could go back again, could he? "Not now. Surely not." He shrugged and grinned at me in a way I'd never seen. Like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, and he could finally be free to be happy. "This isn't over yet, Sarah. Not by a long shot. Do your interview and I'll answer their questions as well. Meet me at my place tonight and we'll talk strategy." He squeezed my thighs once more and I had to stifle the moan that rose in my throat. He winked at me, actually winked. Then stood up. "Good job, detective. See you tonight." Geoff walked away, and I enjoyed the clench and thrust of his ass in his leathers. That was one sexy man. "Okay, detective. Start from the beginning." Well, I regaled our story to the woman I made a deal with. A plea bargain. She guaranteed me that neither Geoff nor I would be in trouble for time hopping backwards, considering the circumstances. I gave my statement and staggered out of the police station with my head held high. I could go back to work now. I'd caught the real bad guy, but what about Amanda? Was she really an undercover policewoman and had never told me? Or was she someone the commissioner had paid on the side? So many questions still left unanswered. I decided to walk home, the questions and puzzles still buzzing around my mind. Geoff was right. This wasn't over by a long shot. Follow the mystery as Sarah solves her sister's murder in Book 2, here.